Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast the Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, folks. How's everybody been?
And I have just now sent a tweet out to say that we are live.
We're alive! We're alive!
Jesus, mother! I fucking hate you bitches.
For those who require context for that outburst, somebody got the right idea to set off fireworks near Brainstormer's home, and he is understandably guilty about it.
Probably the fucking cunt's right behind my alley.
Yes, the glory of stupidity. Isn't humanity a wonderful thing?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm going to be honest, it was kind of a slow week, but we got some stuff.
Yep.
Mainly two of the topics we will have are kind of ones that have been covered over the week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of hopping on that bandwagon, and saying that kind of makes me feel, I don't know what to feel like.
Well, I mean, in the same way that when New Warriors was a thing, it became sort of the cause du jour. Some of the stuff we'll be covering this week has been very much the cause du jour because,
right.
My God, the sheer just apocalyptic butthurt of some very, very stupid academically inclined people.
Mm-hmm. But that is not our first topic of the night.
No.
And I actually have it prepared this time.
Huzzah! It only took 63 episodes, but we're finally getting the hang of this shit.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Bounty to Comics by George Arenas. I believe I'm saying that name right. And this was published May 20th, 2020. So Star Trek alum Jeffrey Combs claims there is a chasm between what fans want and CBS desires. Dalton, you are the Star Trek fan here. Any comment on that?
Yes.
Any comment on that?
I'd be interested to see in what context he's saying it. Is he saying it in the terms of, and the fans are right to be upset, or is he saying it in terms of, and the fans should be ashamed of themselves for being entitled, rah, rah, rah.
Mm-hmm.
It honestly, in this day and age, it could go either way.
True.
And my reaction will depend upon in what context he's saying it.
I did. You know, the funny thing is, I read some of this before I sent it to you, but I don't remember any of it.
Wait, was it you who sent me this, or was it me who sent you this?
I sent it to you.
Oh, okay. Because I know I was about to send it, but I think you might have sent it first.
Huh. All right. So, shall we begin?
We shall.
Mm-hmm. Star Trek alum Jeffrey Combs, who played a number of characters on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, and Star Trek Enterprise, recently commented on the chasm between what fans want and CBS desire for Star Trek. Combs has played some of the most memorable roles in the franchise. He brought to life Weyoun, a male Vorta who was cloned at least 8 times, with a number of them encountering the Federation during the Dominion War in Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Oh, it's this guy. Okay. Now I know who we're talking about. The name wasn't familiar to me at first, but now that you've said that, it's jogging some memories.
Right. Okay. He also played Andorian Commander Shran in Star Trek Enterprise. Shran was a realistic Andorian whose relationship with Captain Archer played a major role in ending hostilities between Andoria and Vulcan. His actions also led the Andorians to become founding members of the United Federation of Planets.
To be fair, Enterprise is the part of Star Trek that everyone hated before Discovery showed us just how far lower it could go. So I don't have as many points of reference for Enterprise than
I've
some people.
seen some like clips of it. I think it's rather good from what I've seen.
Mm.
Maybe that's just me.
My sweet spot is either the original series or Next Gen, because I've always loved Captain Picard, and you can't go wrong with the original series because it's the original series.
Yeah.
That being said, there have been many a time when I wanted to slap Kirk upside the head for being a moron.
Mm-hmm. He also, on Voyager, he had a minor role playing Pinnock, the coordinator of the Bloodsport Scott Katsi, where he captured 7 of 9 in Tuvok and had 7 fight in the games in exchange for medical help for Tuvok.
Recollections of that episode. Voyager is another one that a lot of people in the Star Trek fandom are iffy on.
Combs' comments came a day after CBS All Access announced their new Akiva Goldsman-led Star Trek Strange New World series that is being marketed as a return to the franchise's optimism.
Huzzah! They can be taught, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? We might be operating on two entirely different definitions of optimism. God only knows at this point. And in the immortal words of Captain James T. Kirk, what does God need with a starship?
His comments came after a fan noted that he had been a part of a number of Star Trek shows in the past. Vendolf Dwarf. Fun fact, Jeffrey Combs is, and always has been, the only actor in Star Trek. He's played every part since he was 12 years old in the original series. I'm sure that's a joke, obviously.
Yes, it is a very funny joke, though, because he does seem to recur an awful lot, more than even I was aware of, which is impressive, considering how obsessed I am with my Trek.
Yeah, Combs would jokingly reply, "Since I was 12. Wow, you learn something every day."
Well, I mean, you might have gotten your brain wiped at some point. I'm pretty sure that's a thing that's happened to at least one of the characters you play.
Mm-hmm. Another fan would express their desire to see him on either Discovery, Picard, or the Strange New World series. You, Jesse T., you are the ultimate chameleon. We kneel in awe of your gift. Seriously, I am hoping to see you on Discovery, Picard, or the upcoming Pike series. Trek just doesn't seem like Trek without Jeffrey Combs upping the ante.
To be fair, I don't think he was in TNG or the original series, so
fair enough.
It might be a little bit narrow to say that.
I won't deny that he's probably still a good actor.
No, he is. From what I remember of him, he's very good, and it is nice seeing him in other stuff. I'm just saying, to say that you're a mainstay of Star Trek without being in either the original series or TNG might be a little bit suspect.
I think technically he's part of TNG with like the other spin-off shows.
I guess if you want to sort of throw all of the post TNG shows sort of under the auspices of TNG, then I guess kind of.
All right.
But I don't, like I said, I don't remember him ever being on TNG. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me in the comments.
So he would respond to this fan writing, "Thank you. Nice thought, but the chasm between what fans want and what the studios want make the chances of it happening slim to none." And Slim left town.
Well put, sir.
Mhm. As a fan of Star Trek, Jeffrey's comments, though realistic, are heartbreaking. However, given how they are marketing Star Trek Strange New Worlds with a return to optimism, there might be some hope for the franchise.
Maybe, but then again, I must point out that there is a potential for two different definitions of optimism. Because the current crop of writers might think of optimism as some sort of social justice utopia, or turning the Federation into what is essentially a social justice utopia. And to everyone else on the planet, a social justice utopia sounds like a vision of a totalitarian nightmare a la 1984. So beware about being optimistic about this optimism. It really depends on who they get to do the writing and what their interpretation of Gene Roddenberry's optimism mandate was originally.
All right. While it gives me an inkling of hope, it appears that Combs does not feel the same way, as his comments come a day after the Strange New Worlds announcement, and the show was even mentioned by the fan as a possibility to have him make an appearance. While it doesn't appear that Combs will be returning to Star Trek anytime soon, he's still working and has become a go-to for voice acting recently, bringing to life Scarecrow and Kite Man in the Lego DC Supervillains video game. He also played Ratchet in the Transformers Robot in Disguise animated series. Wait. If they're talking about the new one, that's a connection to. That's connected to Transformers Prime. Well, no, if he played Ratchet, which is pretty cool, actually, because Ratchet was like one of the coolest characters from Transformers Prime.
Yeah.
All right. He also played Rat King in the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series. I didn't know that, which is that's really fucking cool, actually.
Yeah. This guy apparently gets around, and good for him.
Yeah. More recently, he voiced Prince Lavender in Tigtone.
I have absolutely bumfuck no idea what that is.
Neither do I. All right. He can be seen providing his voice talents to upcoming animated film Age of Stone and Sky, The Sorcerer Beast as the far-seeing Crow. And while it appears he might not be returning to Star Trek anytime soon, you can still watch reruns of. Okay, so this honestly doesn't talk about the.
Yeah, this now that I'm like, I expected from the title that there would be more like elaboration on what he meant there, but this seems like somebody needed to do an article this week and they couldn't find anything better to do the article on.
I mean, technically Jeffrey Combs isn't wrong by a general sense.
No, he's definitely not wrong. I mean, like I said, I wish there had been a little bit more elaboration as to what he meant, but as far as our interpretation of what he said, yeah, I'd be hard pressed to disagree with him.
Mm-hmm.
There is a massive, thunderous chasm between what the powers that be over Star Trek want and what the actual fans and enthusiasts of Star Trek want.
Yeah. I don't really, again, like I'm not a big Star Trek fan, so I don't have the best. I can't
Yeah.
really contribute.
Frankly, I haven't felt entirely whole with Star Trek since like DS9, so I've been iffy on like the last 3 or 4 iterations of Star Trek, and as far as the last 2 iterations of Star Trek, that being the aptly named STD and Star Trek Picard, they are travesties. And how dare you shit on the legacy of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, you Philistines.
Okay, so now the next article is finished loading. So this is from Screen Rant. Batwoman, why Ruby Rose left the Arrowverse. This by Andy Bay Bucott. It's published May 20th, 2020. Why is Ruby Rose stepping down as the series lead of Batwoman after only 1 season? Find out why Kate Kane is being recast for the Arrowverse.
Are they going to actually recast Kate Kane as the character, or are they going to come up with some new character to be Batwoman in her stead? If it were me, I would just come up with another cousin of Kate's to take over for her or something, in the same way she did.
You know what? I feel like they should have just done 13 episodes for the first season of Batwoman, and right before Crisis, they should have just ended it with her going to like the Elseworlds thing.
Yeah. Or
Like
here's an idea: you could just cancel Batwoman if the lead actress doesn't want to do it anymore.
Which is a shame because Ruby Rose is a good actress, and I think she could have worked well.
Yeah, no, she is a good actress. It's just she had virtually nothing to work with in Batwoman, and what she did have to work with was horrible.
Yeah.
We did reviews of the first like 7 episodes of Batwoman. I remember distinctly how horrible it was, and I even tried to watch after we stopped reviewing. This was, to quote a meme from the Gurren Bitches Billy and Mandy, horrible mistake number 1.
Mm-hmm. All right. And also, if you guys want an actually good version of Batwoman for like CW, go check out my other channel, Brainstormer of Pop Culture. There's a video where I rewrite the first season of Batwoman.
Yeah. And it is better.
And it's not saying much
no, it's very hard not to make a version that's better. You just have to care and like understand the material. But for what little it's worth, for anyone that's like completely resigned to the awfulness that is the Ruby Rose Batwoman, his version is better.
Mainly because I actually used the damn origin she has from the comics, which is actually fucking awesome.
Yes. It's amazing what can be accomplished when people actually use their brains instead of their moral schemes.
I mean, it involves a terrorist group called the Religion of Crime. How the fuck do you not use something like that?
Because we have an agenda to push, don't you know? And therefore, all marriage needs to die because we need to prove that it didn't exist in the first place by killing it.
Okay, so moving forward, Batwoman is breaking new ground for the Arrowverse with Ruby Rose exiting the CW drama after only 1 season as its series lead. Greg Berlanti's DC TV franchise saw the addition of Kate Kane back in 2018 with the Elseworlds crossover that introduced Gotham City into the shared universe.
Jesus
with
Christ,
Bruce Wayne.
2 years already. That doesn't make sense.
Well, granted, she appeared in the Elseworlds in 2018, and then her series started in late 2018.
Okay, so yeah, it has been about 2 years, which is pretty
No,
fucking
wait, no, not late 2018. Fall 2019.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, but that's still it got a much fairer shake than the NBC Constantine did. So yeah, there is little faith or hope in the universe.
Mhm.
Batwoman got a better go at it than Constantine did. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Weep for humanity.
With Bruce Wayne / Batman being missing for years, Kate stepped in to take over as Gotham's protector when it needed a hero. I'm sure we'll bring up our opinions on Batwoman sometime during this. So,
It is practically inevitable at this point. Yeah.
yeah. Her introduction became a big addition to the Arrowverse's LGBTQIA representation.
And just for the record, as a bisexual person who is also disabled, fuck you.
With Legends of Tomorrow, White Canary, Katie Loltz, Black Lightning's Thunder, Nafissa Williams. If I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sorry. Supergirl's Alex Danvers, Chyler Leigh. Again, if I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sorry. And several more.
You did not just yada yada John motherfucking Constantine as played by Matt Ryan. You did not just do that.
He's a man. Remember?
Hmm?
He's a man. He doesn't count.
Which basically means that the B and the G in the LGBT acronym don't count either if we just ignore all the men that exist who occupy it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm more upset that you're yada yada-ing John Constantine because nobody puts Johnny in a corner. God damn it.
Granted, the writer could be referring to like main characters, like lead roles or something.
Well, but I suppose, but
No, I understand. It's still stupid, but
you can't really do that with Legends of Tomorrow because it's literally a team show.
fair enough. I mean, granted, in the early seasons, you could say Rip Hunter was like the lead.
Well, yeah, but I guess that's because Rory graduated from Companion to Time Lord, as many people have joked before.
Time Master.
I was making a Doctor Who joke.
Oh, I know, but at least be accurate.
Fair play. Yeah, but yeah. Aside from the fact that Rory graduated from Companion to Time Lord, there really wasn't a main character in Legend.
Well,
and they did hinge an entire season plot around Johnny basically destroying the multiverse with a kiss of his black boyfriend. So there is that.
God, it's the whole social justice thing has really gotten out of control for those shows nowadays.
Yeah, but at least their relationship worked. It's not like they pulled some shit out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I get that. I respect that. It's just, again, like, I feel like it's really, honestly, those shows kind of went downhill after like first couple of seasons.
To be fair, if anyone was going to destroy the multiverse with a kiss, it would be John Constantine. He is that much of a grade A fuck up.
Yep. All right. While roles have been recast before in the Arrowverse, or present and even upcoming shows such as Superman and Lois, Sam Lane now being played by Dylan Walsh instead of Supergirl's Lynn Morshower. Rose's departure marks new territory. From all the DC TV shows that have come since Arrow's start in 2012, none of the main leads have ever been recast. According to Rose's official statement, it was a tough decision to be stepping down from the leading part while not specifying further on why she is departing. Per additional reports, Rose's reason for leaving Batwoman isn't related to the massive injuries she suffered back in 2019 during the early days of production. I didn't know she got hurt during production, actually.
And now I feel bad for her. The question is, do I feel worse for her knowing that she got injured on the set of a very terrible show?
hmm Even though Rose's decision seems to be an amicable notes, there may be a few other major factors that played a big part. While Rose's titular character became the first Arrowverse LGBT character to officially headline their own show. Oh, not that it's actually a cool fucking character that should be given more love. No, it's because she likes.
It just checks this arbitrary box we've filled out, and once again, as a bisexual person who is disabled, who also happens to be dating a black guy, you can fuck yourself with a flagpole, my darling.
Yeah, but anyway, it's that aside. Where was I? There were controversies sparked when she first landed the role. Back in August 2018, when Rose was officially cast, decision was met with criticism from several fans of the comic heroine. Uh, I don't really remember there being a lot of.
No, if anything, people just went, where she's not diverse enough. Or are you talking about the people on sort of our quote unquote side of the argument who said this is going to be nothing but feminist propaganda and thereby is going to suck?
Which is a shame because, again, it's a really cool character that really should be given more spotlight and love.
Yeah. You could say that about just about every character in the Arrowverse. They've reduced to basically a filling the LGBT token box.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest complaints made about the casting was Rose not being Jewish like Batwoman in the comics. I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know Batwoman was Jewish.
I actually, now that you think about it, now that you mention it, I do vaguely remember that being a thing.
Well, granted, I haven't read the comics of Batwoman, which I feel bad that I haven't, but also,
I haven't really read a bunch either, but that's mostly because I don't really care for the Bat family in general. So it's not like most sexism. It's just I don't do the Bat sphere of the DC universe very often.
Yeah. Rose's casting was received. I feel like there's a lot of spelling mistakes, not spelling, but like grammar mistakes here, and I'm not. I'm getting that, but I'm not sure how.
I think this is Screen Rant, right?
Yep.
Dear Screen Rant, you are a semi-professional publication that people somewhat take remotely seriously on geek culture issues. Procure for yourself a fucking editor, please.
Right. Okay. Criticism in regards to her sexuality, as the studio was looking to cast an openly LGBT actress for the part. And I don't really think that's an issue. I think mostly you should be looking for someone who can act.
Yeah, the merit of the acting is more important than filling the box.
I mean, granted, Ruby Rose can act.
Yes, she can when she is given even the slightest inkling of material.
Again,
unfortunately, that is not here.
I do have to point out Ares from John Wick Chapter 2.
Yes.
That was her character. Didn't talk because she was mute, I believe, or deaf.
Mm-hmm.
But badass character nonetheless.
Yeah.
And she went out like a boss. I mean, granted, she did get her ass kicked, but she still fought like hell.
Well, yeah, but everyone in John Wick is basically a badass. That is one of the things John Wick as a franchise excels at being.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like instant. It's like instant badass. Just add film.
Right, right. And the thing is that, um, what was it? Thinking, damn it, I had something. You could make Kate Kane like Ares, just give her a, obviously make her talk and stuff. But other than that, that's a character, use that as the basis for a Kate Kane character.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But instead, you created a bland, forgettable goth chick with a chip on her shoulder the size of the Grand Canyon.
mhm. With Rose seeing herself as gender fluid, it painted the star as not being gay enough to play the iconic Bat heroine.
And who opened that Pandora's box, I wonder? Could it be the identity-obsessed morons who think that identities function as teams and therefore we need team representation everywhere? For
Yeah,
anyone who's annoyed at the complaints towards this, please be aware that you created this problem and you are now essentially begging them to fix it. You opened this Pandora's box and now you have to deal with the consequences of what's inside the damn thing.
mhm. The massive amount of comments on social media led to Rose leaving Twitter as well as restricting comments on her official Instagram page.
Yeah, which is kind of a bitch move for her to do, honestly.
Well, I'm gonna give her it because there can be some really nasty folk out there.
Well, I'm sure, but as a general rule, I see no reason why, like, given that both the mute button and the block button exist, there's no reason you should need to leave Twitter over that shit, unless there's
Hey,
unless there are actual credible threats, which no one can ever seem to actually demonstrate.
mhm. I don't know. I'll give her a leeway on that because sometimes you just gotta get off Twitter and just not
Yeah,
be on
no,
it.
Twitter is cancer. I'm just saying to leave of your own accord is one thing. To be forced out by people being mean to you is quite another.
I don't know. I'll give her it. I'm not.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm being a little bit hard on her, but as a general rule, I think that it would be better for everyone if everyone could just decide to withstand that kind of shit. Because the thing about the internet is there's an old adage of don't feed the trolls, and by giving them what they want, by allowing them to bully you into submission, you're giving them what they want. And anytime you give trolls, especially trolls with a moral cause to fight, what they want for reasons other than they made an actual decent argument, you're just going to create more trolls. The more power you give to the feminist Stasi, the more power the feminist Stasi is going to wield in the future. So
Mhm.
don't give the feminist Stasi any power, is what I'm saying.
All right. So where was I? Well, Rose has hit it with critics and viewers across Batwoman season 1.
Say that again. I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah, while Rose has hit it with critics and viewers across Batwoman season 1. She has.
Nuclear fucking facepalm. What? Well, I'm sure she did do well with critics, but viewers, my darling.
Granted, the writer could be talking about Rose herself.
I suppose, yes, but
But I believe in the context we are perceiving it as, we would have to disagree with that.
I suppose you could make the argument that whatever small amount of viewership the show was actually getting liked it, but even they, I'm sure, even the like super Batwoman fans probably wouldn't consider her better than, say, Margot or Julia from The Magicians, or trying to think of another like female, or Agent Carter from the Agent Carter series. Like even comparing like to like, I can't imagine there's a massive dedicated fan base here. So yeah, what the actual fuck are you playing at? Just because you want there to be a fan base for this does not mean there is an actual fan base for this. Sorry, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. Willing things into existence does not make them so, unfortunately. Unless you are very, very careful with your will, and you have not been careful.
Mm-hmm. She has still received some negative criticism for her portrayal of Kate King. Yeah, it's criticism. I don't think that's qualifies as like
Yeah, unfortunately, if you do anything that involves any kind of skill or craft or meritocracy, there will be people who either sincerely or disingenuously criticize you. Because when you make yourself a public figure and you make yourself a public target, targets unfortunately draw arrows, and they will always draw arrows. If you paint a target on yourself by making yourself a public figure, someone somewhere is going to be bitchy with you, whether that's genuine or not. And incidentally, I think in most cases this was probably more genuine than you'd like to think.
right. And you and I have criticized Batwoman because we watched the first 7 episodes, and our main criticisms were mainly with like the storytelling and
Yes,
the
writing, the characterization, the acting, the visual aesthetics, the atmosphere, the song choices, and so on.
Yeah, I don't think they were unfounded, and I don't think we were personally attacking anyone really.
No.
Right?
And if anyone thinks we did, then
You're a fucking idiot.
you're going to have to provide examples, because you can't just assert that we were more negative than we actually were.
Yeah. Okay, so where was I? However, the decision to part ways is coming from both Rose and the creative team after having looked back at shooting season 1 together and its respective challenges. Despite it not being addressed in her departure announcement, it wouldn't be surprised if the negative feedback played a role in Rose's decision to step down from the series. Okay, that I agree with, though granted not in the context that I believe the writer is trying to portray it.
Yeah, I think the writer seems to be wanting to portray this as she's a victim of negative criticism, rather than the show sucked and we need to try and salvage it somehow.
Right. There's only so much that anyone can take emotionally, especially from thousands and thousands of comments that are made online. There it is.
Yep. My darling, once again, you made the choice to be a performer, a public performer that is viewed by millions of people, or at least thousands of people on the television. And if you make your living off of performance skills, then people are going to judge you based on your performance skills. And if you decide to perform in your role as a performer in an IP that sucks, or a iteration of an IP that sucks, you're going to get negative criticism. And people being honest with you is not harassment. Once again, if you don't want to give trolls power, then you have two options. You can either ignore them, or you can mock them. Or, and there is a third option, you can take whatever you consider to be valid criticism on board and ignore the rest, just like everybody else. Because in the medium of performance, my darling, in the medium of art, the audience very much serves the role of quality control, especially when critics fail, for biased ideological reasons. When critics fail to actually do their jobs and be qualitative about the media they consume, it falls to the audience to make those kind of assessments. And if the audience doesn't like you because there simply is no quality to be had in the thing we are discussing, then that is not your fault necessarily, but it is also not something to claim victim status over. Apologies, but you painted this target on yourself, and now you're having to deal with the metaphorical arrows in your gut. Either find a job that doesn't involve dealing with public criticism, or learn to take public criticism, or decide which criticism you will take stock in and which you won't. It's perfectly within your power to do so, but if you just blanket ignore all criticism, then you are the problem. I'm sorry, but that is the long and the short of it. Moving on.
I'm back.
Aha. Perfect timing.
Yeah, I got
What
some
are-
burgers. My family were grilling out burgers, because it was nice out.
Ah.
Flame broiled. Just. I know you don't like burgers. I know you don't like burgers, but it's good. It's good burgers.
Mm-hmm. What soda are you drinking? Judging by the
7-Up.
sound. Ah.
It's 7-Up. We have root beer, but I didn't want to grab it because I knew you were going to make fun of me for it.
I'm not making fun of you. Back when I drank soda, I used to drink root beer all the time. It's part of your drinking game, so I have to point it out to the people in the comments.
I am fully aware of that. So, all right. Well,
only so much you can take with thousands of comments on the internet, yada yada yada.
Right. Okay. Even if the decision had nothing to do with the stunt injury, it might be to take care of herself mentally, which is fueling this decision. Only time will tell what other reasons there were for Rose to leave the Arrowverse after having starred as Batwoman for almost 2 years.
Sweetheart, if you are that negatively affected by criticism, then A, it might behoove you to develop a thicker skin considering you're a public performer, and B, you probably have a sense of entitlement that really needs to be dealt with. Because generally speaking, it's only people who think they are flawless and perfect that have that much of a problem dealing with criticism. I tell a slight lie. There are two kinds of people that are that negatively impacted by criticism. There are people who think they are perfect, i.e. narcissists, who can never even consider that they've done anything wrong. Or B, people who are so prone to spiraling into depression that even small things can trigger them. And in either case, my response, darling, is get some help, because you are in a field that requires an external locus of personality. And if you can't deal with that external locus of personality being challenged and criticized, then either you are a narcissist who feels entitled to a world in which he can do no wrong, or you are you are someone who is prone to depression and therefore probably should seek help and develop some internal resilience and some confidence. Either way, my advice is seek help, because this is not healthy, given the job you decided to go into, my darling. Moving on.
The second season won't premiere until January 2021, as it remains to be seen when production can start again due to coronavirus pandemic. A new actress will be cast in the part, and just like with Rose, the creative team is looking to find an openly gay actress to star starting in Batwoman season 2.
So not only are you not taking the hint by just canceling the show that apparently even the main actor doesn't want to be in anymore, but you're doubling down on what led you to this problem in the first place by going identity rather than meritocracy. This is only going to happen again, because unless the show is actually substantively improved, the criticism is going to keep coming in, and therefore the actor you choose is going to have to deal with the criticism. And there are only so many healthy ways you can deal with criticism that don't involve just breaking down into a puddle of warm ooze.
Mhm. You know, maybe this is me, and this has been a go-to choice whenever you're casting like a redhead or something.
Mm-hmm.
But Karen Gillan.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think Karen Gillan would actually do it. And also, her red hair is slightly off color to Kate Kane's, so I don't know how that would work. Also, I don't want to see Karen Gillan get dragged through the mud on a show like this. So
Well, I mean,
my
if we,
advice to the CW and Warner Brothers would be just let the show die already. I know it's your sacred cow because it signifies your feminist morality or whatever, but please, for the love of God, take the hint, take the L, and let it die.
well, I'm mainly
If
talking. Look, I'm mainly talking like if we go back in time and make a Batwoman show based on merit.
Yeah, if this were that kind of Batwoman show, then sure. But even then, I don't think Karen Gillan would probably do it because she seems to be a little bit. She's had success and she has very much deserved that success. So
Kind of a big,
I think
too much of a big name actor at this point.
well, if it were a show on like HBO or Stars or something like a prestige network, I could see her doing it. But just a random cable network, probably not.
All right, fair enough. I just like her, and I would like to see her in really cool stuff more.
Yes, Karen Gillan needs to be in all the things. More of the things, please, with Karen Gillan in them.
So that was it. Yeah, that's the end of the article. All right, so I'm pretty sure we have some things to say about Batwoman in general, like the show, not the character itself. Well, the TV show character, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I think you had some.
No, go ahead.
All right. Well, to be fair, I haven't really kept up to date with the show since we stopped doing the reviews. I mean, I watched a few of like the those previews for the episodes.
Yeah.
Mainly the one that caught my attention, and I thought of like watching the episode was the episode where they actually did Hush, like the costume and everything. Granted, I didn't watch it because I knew it was still going to be bad. But yeah, I am.
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, and so forth. So
Yeah.
Fool me for the 1,000th time, then shame on everyone at that point.
So my main thing with this show itself, again, was it had no real clear direction where it was going. You know, it didn't really have an overall thing, like a goal for the characters to really do.
Yeah, its main goal, I think, was simply to exist for the most part.
Well, I know that. I'm talking like story-wise. There wasn't really a goal in the story.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Rather than having any sort of internal goal, it just sort of we're here and we exist. Get used to it, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
which is why I really wish the CW would just take the L already. It didn't work. It clearly wasn't meant to be. Just take the L. I know you're going to throw hissy fit because more morality, but some things need to die.
Right. Totally agree. And then the weird thing is that there are building blocks within the show to make a good one.
And they just never really utilize them for anything.
Yeah. Right. And okay, so the first thing obviously is the whole Batman disappearing thing, right? That
Yeah, why wasn't that the first plot for her to unravel? Like, why wasn't that the season-long arc of her, like, feeling uncertain about herself and learning to sort of grow into the role of Batwoman, and then devoting all of her resources to finding her cousin, who she apparently cared about deeply, and so forth?
granted,
Why?
yeah. So
Like, it literally writes itself, basically, but they didn't bother.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just it's weird that I mean, all they really did was that he basically just left. He quit being Batman, and that's not Bruce Wayne as a character.
Yeah, unless he is literally dead, there is no force on this earth or any other that will stop Bruce Wayne from being Batman. That is his character. Like, I'm pretty sure that if a god told him to stop being Batman, he would kick that god in the groin and then go on being Batman because he's Batman.
Right. Granted, I'm going a little bit into my rewrite a little bit, but it makes sense. And not to mention that the fact is that even with all the other CW superhero shows, each character had a reason why they would become that superhero.
Yeah.
For Oliver, it was to save his city. That changed over time, but the goal was still the same: protect the city, save the people, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
For Barry, it was to stop people abusing the superpowers they had, and to protect people, to make sure they don't suffer the same fate he did when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
The Legends, I can't really pin down exactly one thing or another because they had different objectives altogether.
Yeah, they all have different backstories and so forth, but like you could broadly say that, like,
it was a thing about fate and destiny and how
the desire to matter in the grand scheme of things, and the desire to leave a mark and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with John, it's of course the redeeming himself after the Newcastle incident. That's been the go-to motivation for him since the NBC days. So yeah,
and Black Lightning. Granted, I know the show is a little bit of an SJW thing, but what I've never seen of it was actually pretty good. He's an older hero, and he's really going back into being a hero because he wants to clean up the mess that he left when he retired. So it's kind of it's his own personal self-redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Kate Kane want to be a hero?
Because people said she couldn't, and she wants to because women.
She wants to be herself. A way to actually find herself. That is why she dons the costume. In the show. And that is my biggest issue. Because all the other characters, for the most part, it's a selfless reason why they're heroes.
Yeah.
It's a
or at the very least, it's a higher reason than just themselves. It's an external reason of, I want redemption for this bad thing I did, or I want to leave a mark on history because history has decreed that I don't matter, basically. Yada yada yada.
Yeah. Weird thing is the comics, Kate Kane is a victim of trauma, like immense trauma.
Yeah. Much like basically every member of the Bat family at this point.
Right. And because again, my thing is that the whole point of Batman and the Bat family is how one has reacted to the trauma that has made them. And that was
That
actually
that's why Batman and the Joker work so well as mirrors to each other, because they both, as much as I think the Joker would hate to admit it, when Batman had his one bad day, it made him a better person, not a worse one. And that's the difference between Batman and the Joker. They both have gone through, as he put it, the one bad day, but one of them used it as an excuse to get better, and one of them broke.
mhm.
And that's the main difference between them. You have to be at least a little bit fucked in the head to wear a giant bat suit and spend millions of dollars on toys and basically doing what Batman does. But if it's a choice between Batman's version of fucked in the head or the Joker's version of fucked in the head, then
Batman.
yeah,
And you're still fucked in the head, but at least you're more
yeah.
stable.
He's using it constructively rather than destructively.
Yeah. And Kate Kane, for one thing, she is a woman who will not compromise in her own beliefs. Like, again, I'm talking about the comics version of Kate Kane.
Mhm.
She won't back down in her beliefs. So she's steadfast and strong like that.
Mhm.
She's
And I think to some extent that's what they were going for with her personality in the show. But the thing is, when you have someone who is steadfast and who is immovable, it is very hard to walk the line between making them like righteously angry and noble versus making them a self-important, self-indulgent asshole.
right. Oh, hey, Ahsoka Tano Gaming. Yeah, and so she's very steadfast in her own beliefs. She doesn't back down when challenged, so she has that courageous thing.
Mhm.
I mean, granted, you could say that about the show too, but I think it does come off as annoying at times.
Mhm.
But I also think she can be headstrong and jumps into danger without really thinking.
Yeah. It like I said, it's very hard to walk that line between actually righteous and just straight up self-righteous.
Yeah.
There's a very fine line there.
Right, and another thing too, again, I don't remember the show much, but I think she, I had it. Does she have really flaws, like as a character, as a person?
Not really. The universe itself kind of goes out of its way to make everyone aware that she's awesome and that everyone around her is shit.
Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know much about Batwoman, but from what I remember reading about the character, in the comics, she has been a drunk. She kind of was Bruce Wayne in a way that she just slept around.
Yeah, and running with the one bad day theme, whereas the Joker became a chaotician when he had his one bad day, and Batman became an immovable rock when he had his one bad day. Kate Kane got damaged, and
Right.
a lot of her arc is redeeming herself from that damage.
Right. And you could like if we were to actually sit down and write this show out, like I think for her first character arc, it would obviously be accepting that she is broken and moving on from that.
Uh-huh. And realizing that she's not helplessly broken, that she can actually do things to repair herself, or at least try to heal.
Mm-hmm. Again, how is it that two guys on the internet can come up with a better show than actual?
Because we actually care and bothered to do even the minorest bit of research.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to push an explicit moral agenda. We're just sort of letting things happen as they may.
Mm. And don't get me started on how they handled certain characters in the show. compared to the comics.
Yeah, I still think the most like likable and interesting character in that show is actually Alice.
Hmm.
Granted, I haven't watched much of it since like episode 10, but yeah, I'm still of the opinion that Alice is the reason to watch that show if you're gonna watch that show. But anyway, let's move on to the next docket on the agenda there.
Right. Don't get me started on Lucas Fox.
Uh,
All right, so this is from The Vulture. This is by Abraham Reisman, and if I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sorry. Published May 21st, 2020. What hath the Snyder Cut released? Okay.
the dark specter of giving people what they want, sir. That is the long and the short of it. And you are moralistically appalled like a fucking Victorian aristocrat by the fact that people who you disagree with or you don't consider valid humans are getting shit that they want. I am going to get so much material out of you, I don't even know where to begin, Mr. Reisman. I don't even know where to begin.
Oh, all right. Chrononaut says Legends was more of they were lied to than made it happen.
Well, yeah, in season 1, Rip Hunter was kind of an asshole, but essentially the same paradigm was ultimately true, though. Like, they were essentially irrelevant people from history, so they decided to take it and run with it, and still their purpose was history says that we're irrelevant, let's prove history wrong. Yeah.
Snyder Cut, money, or dollar signs. This is what the studio sees, says Chrononaut.
Well, yes, it's what the studio sees, but it also represents the studio giving in to what the fans want. Now, granted, probably a lot of the people who like the Snyder movies are not people that I personally would agree with, but I firmly hold fast to the idea that the people who should get to dictate what happens when it comes to entertainment are the people who enjoy a given franchise. So if the Snyder Cut folks want to marshal their forces and get the Snyder Cut, then they should be perfectly entitled to do that. And I don't think there's anything toxic about that. It's just making the world sit up and pay attention to you. And because people like Mr. Reisman here are that much of aristocratic douchebags, not only did you get affronted by the very fact that people who you disagree with would get things they want, Mr. Reisman, but you cheesily phrased it in like a quasi-biblical way, just going to prove how thoroughly aristocratic you are. And incidentally, once again, may I point out that this is Murica, and in Murica, we don't need no fucking aristocracy.
Right. In retrospect, it was inevitable. It's like Brexit. It's like God damn it!
Use your words, but brainstormer, use your words.
It's like Brexit or Donald Trump's clinching of the presidency. Why the fuck does that have to be? Why did this shit have to be brought up?
Because these are the things that keep his poor aristocratic brain up at night. These are the things that he finds so affronting that he doesn't want to allow them to exist. He is essentially so horrified by things going in ways that he doesn't determine that even though they both happened 4 fucking years ago at this point, he still has to dig in his heels and whine about it at any given opportunity because this reality simply will not do in his mind. he's looking at the fact that Brexit and Trump exist, and he is so unorgasmically horrified that he has to basically invest in a fainting couch and smelling salts. It's how dare reality provide those people, those irrelevant peasants, any sort of validity. I declare what validity is, and I say those things are invalid. Therefore, how could anyone possibly make them happen anyway? How could reality do this to me? Wah, wah, wah.
First, you hear that it happened. Then, even if you wanted it to happen, you're shocked. These people aren't supposed to be calling the shots. They're declasse, I suppose declassed outsiders, drunk on atavistic. Why the fuck are you using these kind of words? No one uses these kind of words.
Because he's an aristocrat. And he's morally outraged, so he has to open the thesaurus of old-timey, like, ye old aristocratic words of shock and horror and go with it.
Right. On atavistic.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, fine. On atavistic rage and viciously abusive toward their foes. Such people are destined to be at the fringe, not the hub of power. Oh, bullshit! You motherfuckers are in power, you asshole.
And here and there exactly is the rub. Journalists as a class, pretty much, journalists and politicians as a class, more or less, thrive on pet moralistic activist causes. And every 3 articles in the Guardian, I can guarantee you there's at least one that has activist hinges in it, or BuzzFeed, or, you know, Vox, or CNN, or MSNBC, or what have you. But when other people do it, when the invalid people do it, when the people we've determined are irrelevant do it, then it's really, you can't honestly tell me that activism worked for these people, can you? When we do activism, it's perfectly valid because we are the moral crusaders. We are the upper class. We are the self-appointed aristocracy. But when those people do it, it's like a peasant uprising, and you can't give the peasants validity because then they might think that they actually have a say in things. We can't allow the peasants to think they have a say in things. How dare we? Well, my darling, Mr. Reisman, this, once again, is a fucking America. And in a fucking America, we don't need no stinking aristocracy, be that actual aristocracy or culturally and academically appointed aristocracy. Especially if you're going to take the role of the aristocracy without any of the responsibilities or qualifications of the aristocracy. Because as much as I bag on the concept of the aristocracy, there was actually a fuck ton of work that had to go into being an aristocrat back then. Because you had to keep a good court, and you had to keep good relations with your subjects, and you had to keep good relations with other aristocrats, and you had to keep good relations with people you were in diplomatic relationship with, and so forth. And you essentially had to be a well-rounded human being. There was a movement in the Renaissance for essentially humanistic philosophy, whereby the best thing a proper or noble human being could do would be to become the best human being they could possibly be by being as well-rounded as possible. That's where we get the idea of the Renaissance man from. But these people want to take all of the authority and the clout and the pomp and the circumstance of the aristocracy, but they don't want to believe that merit exists. In fact, they are psychotically on a crusade that says any conception of merit is cancerous and needs to be blotted out of society. So essentially, you want to have all the power of an aristocrat and all the authority of an aristocrat and all the fancy smancy frou-frou cultural airs of an aristocrat, but none of the actual substance of being an aristocrat. None of the actual work of being an aristocrat. No noblesse oblige or no need to become a well-rounded and self-actualized human being. You want all the power, but none of the responsibility, essentially. And that is why people like me would rather live in a world where there's no aristocracy than a world where the aristocracy can get away with all the shit the aristocracy used to be able to get away with, but not actually be beholden to any reasonable standards or principles. Because you're essentially an aristocrat without any of the substance and all of the irrelevant cultural woo. Moving on. I knew I was going to get a lot of material out of this guy. This is some super tier levels of unself-aware.
Yeah. And yet, when you stop mumbling your disbelief, you're stuck with the reality that it happened, that an ancient seal has been broken, and you start to see all the forces that broke it. Soon you're kicking yourself for not seeing this certainty sooner. Jesus,
You're comparing people who you don't consider valid getting what they want to an apocalypse. You're literally referencing the Book of Revelation with the breaking of the breaking of the seven seals. Are you seriously that out of touch and that pompously, cartoonishly aristocratic that people who you don't think should be listened to getting what they want at the expense of you is equivalent to the world fucking ending? Moving on.
Jesus, you think it really happened? They really released the Snyder Cut.
Well, I mean, they haven't released it yet, but they're working on it.
Yeah. That's right, folks. At some point next year, Warner Brothers will unveil a new edition of its 2017 flop, Justice League. Motherfucking little hillbilly cuntwads.
They're still doing the fireworks thing?
Yep, it's getting darker, so it makes sense.
Yeah, but why the fuck are they? It's May. It's fucking May.
Yeah, it's about June, so.
Yeah, and neither of none of these things imply any sort of occasion for fireworks.
I know. But hey, it happens around here every year. Anyway.
That's really weird and stupid.
You have no idea. What was I? Okay. Of its 2017 flop, Justice League, one that promises to be guided creatively by the first of the two directors who sequentially helmed the flick, Zack Snyder. For someone who doesn't spend an exuberant amount of time on social media, the news means nothing. But ask anyone on film Twitter or geek Twitter about the Snyder Cut, and they'll know all too well of what you speak. Really?
Yes, because incidentally, it seems as though, my friend, that you, as much as you would like it to be to the contrary, are not the voice of the people. The people disagree with you because you, right, are the ones in power. And this is the other thing that baffles me about these kind of cultural aristocrats. They still operate under this delusion that it's still fucking the 1950s and the only people in power are hypersensitive evangelicals and they're the young rebels from like Dead Poet Society or Freedom Writers or Patch Adams or some shit. Dude, you won the argument almost 30 years ago, which means that you are now the ones in power, which means further that when you become out of touch with the people who you are assumed to preside over, they will rise up against you because you are being an aristocratic cunt in the same way that the evangelicals used to be aristocratic cunts. It is the simple nature of power for those with power to be corrupted by power, and then for those without power to check that power by being a hostile or contradictory force. It's basic human sociology 101.
And there's a mortar.
Ah, fucking hell. The world may be ending, but at least there's time for fireworks, I suppose.
Yeah, do what you can to decrease the boredom of being locked in your house.
I'm just glad no one who's like decided to become the next Unabomber or anything in the meantime. I probably just horribly jinxed that. I'm gonna knock on wood now.
Like I said before the stream, man, your mind goes to weird places.
Well, I'm not making that much of a leap this time. I can see somebody going from like, let's set off some fireworks because we're bored, to let's use these fireworks to create a bomb because we're bored and mail it to that one guy who pissed us off at one time. Because there are weird sociopathic motherfuckers in the world, unfortunately.
I think you gave someone an idea, man.
Yeah, well.
And the firecrackers. Really?
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Anyway, the short backstory: Snyder was hired by WB to make Justice League as a sequel to his superhero pictures Man of Steel and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. See, here, you know, what's funny is I think if someone was to edit Man of Steel and BVS together,
there might be something substantive there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, the actual director's cut of BBS was nowhere near as bad as the theatrical cut.
It was coherent, but I think the themes were the issue.
Yeah, no, it was still bad. I'm just saying that in many cases, Zack Snyder got fucked over by Warner Brothers and DC. Warner Brothers and DC for the longest time were their own worst enemy because they wanted to make money off of this superhero genre without ever actually validating the superhero genre. So they kept insisting that they needed to fix something that wasn't broken. And as is so often the case, when you try to fix something that isn't broken, you broke it.
Wait, did I ever mention the story of when I went to see BVS in theaters? Because I did when it came out.
I don't think you ever mentioned it. I'm curious now.
Okay, so the story goes is that me and my uncle, who are like big superhero fans, we basically went to every Marvel movie there was since Avengers. Well, every comic book movie, really. So yeah, we're big fans of movies in general, but still, my point being is that we went there like on the night or like the night before the official release of the movie.
Oh, the midnight showing on that Thursday?
I believe so, yeah. Huge fucking crowd, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
We went to a 3D, I believe it was IMAX version. Cost us a pretty penny.
As they often do, yes.
We, unfortunately, did not get there early enough in time. There, basically, the entire fucking theater was filled except for like 2 or 3 seats. And the seats we had gotten were not ones that you would find great for a 3D movie. Basically, up close to the side.
Oh no.
Right. So for us to actually experience 3D stuff, granted, there wasn't really much 3D going on in the movie.
Right.
we had to turn our goddamn heads every fucking time. So we were in like this goddamn corner of the theater.
Mm.
And then not even a good corner, like at the top.
Right.
No, it's right down at the base of the screen. You have to look up and look to the side.
Mm.
That was my experience of watching BVS in the theaters. Funny enough, I actually thought the movie was fine on first viewing. It was just
Although, to be fair, you were probably just glad to be seeing any movie in that situation.
yeah. But yeah, that was my experience of seeing Batman v Superman when I went to go see it prior to opening night.
Interesting. Shall we continue?
Yes, we shall. All right, where was I? He allegedly completed a rough skeleton of Justice League featuring Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and a host of other DC characters, but was taken off of the film ostensibly to grieve over after the death of his daughter. I mean, yeah, I don't think you really want to work after that.
Although to be fair, a lot of it probably was pressure from Warner Brothers getting rid of him because of how middling to bad the results of his world building had been up until that point. Granted, most of that was from Warner Brothers themselves meddling because, like I said, they had no faith in the actual genre they wanted to make money off of, and therefore they needed to fix what wasn't broken, and thereby they broke it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, funny enough, I think in one of my earlier drafts, and I think I always would put it if I was remaking Justice League, like re-editing it.
Mm-hmm.
I always made sure to put a tribute to the Snyder family.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there is blame to be put at the feet of Zack Snyder because he's an edgy little twat with his Randian approach to superheroes, which is, unless you're dealing with someone like The Question, is kind of horrible.
Right.
Like, there are Randian superheroes that I think Zack Snyder could do very well at, but needing Superman to kill somebody so that he then learns why killing is bad is some grade A nihilistic bullshit.
Here's my thing. It could work if it was more accident. Like
yeah, but if it had just been an accident, I don't think Zack Snyder would consider that a good enough reason not to kill again. He needed to kill somebody in the worst possible way so that he could learn. According to Zack Snyder's backwards logic, he needed to kill somebody in the worst possible way so that he could learn that killing was bad, because he's an edgy little twat.
No, okay. I think the destruction of Metropolis is enough for Superman to learn the value of human life, like truly learn and respect and care about it.
And then of course there's the other sort of elephant in the room of why the fuck would anyone need to kill somebody to learn that killing is bad? It could just be that Superman is an idealistic twat, like he's always been kind of an idealistic twat.
Okay, I will agree on the idealism, not so much on the twat, but that's
well. But I'm sort of trying to put it in ways that somebody like Zack Snyder can understand. As much as you might not understand idealism because of your Randian approach to morality, sir, and I don't even necessarily think there's anything wrong with a Randian approach to morality, but as much as you might be convinced of Randian approaches to that sort of thing, you have to understand that Superman, at his core, is not that kind of character. He is an idealist. He is a romanticist. He is basically everything that Ayn Rand was kind of ashamed of. He is that much of an idealistic homespun, corn-pone motherfucker, because he was raised as, at least in standard continuity, he was raised by a bunch of idealistic Midwestern lower class hicks, essentially.
Hmm.
He's, he was raised on the whole mom baseball apple pie, that whole shenanigans. So as much as you might want to reshape Superman to make him a Randian character, Mr. Snyder, it doesn't work, because at his core he is exactly as idealistic and romanticist as you are cynical and Randian.
Well, right. Okay, we'll get more into that later after we get through this.
Yeah. But I just wanna point that out, that just because I'm glad they are making a Snyder's Cut doesn't mean that I think that Zack Snyder did an amazing job with his movies or anything. He was an idealistic, cynical little edgelord with way too much faith in his own moral schema and no faith in anyone else.
You know what's funny? I remember a lot of people saying that if anything, you should just let Joss Whedon make Justice League.
Yeah, it honestly they should have just stole Joss Whedon from Marvel when Age of Ultron went bust and had him do it from the start. It worked once, and he's the guy who did Buffy of all things, so why not? But
Honestly,
I understand the logic of wanting Zack Snyder on, because he did do a very good job of Watchmen. Thing with Watchmen is Watchmen was supposed to be mildly deconstructive, so it makes sense that he would excel at deconstructing something that's supposed that to accurately portray something that's supposed to be a deconstruction. But you give him something that's not supposed to be a deconstruction, like Superman, and he's gonna turn it into mildly nihilistic, cynical, edgy shit, because that's his approach to the world. And he can't. And the biggest failing of Zack Snyder is he is so thoroughly convinced that the Randian approach to morality is the right approach to morality that he can't see Superman being idealistic as anything other than Superman being an idiot. So he had to fix Superman. And unfortunately, as we just went over, you try to fix something that isn't broken, and there's about a 60 to 70% chance you're gonna break it.
Yeah, again, what's funny is I think there is stuff in Zack Snyder's movies that could work. Again, I feel like we're going on a side right here. We'll get more into that later. I want to get more into this later.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon was then brought on to finish Justice League, and the resulting movie landed with a thud at the box office. Outraged Snyder fans subsequently spent an astonishing 2.5 years lobbying on social media for the release of Snyder's aforementioned skeleton version, using the hashtag release the Snyder Cut.
Yes, because people actually occasionally care about things. I know it's not fashionable in your circles to care about things unironically, sir, except when they're moralistic and socioculturally abstract, but some people actually are invested in things enough to devote energy and time to them. It's called passion. Look it up. Moving on.
Okay, so where was I? Where was I?
Astonishing amount of time.
What?
Astonishing amount of time lobbying to release the Snyder's Cut.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, after that. Okay. The campaign advanced to massive ads at San Diego Comic-Con and a digital billboard in Times Square, among other venues, prompting Snyder and the film's jilted stars to lend their vocal support to the initiative. I didn't know about the billboard in Times Square. I knew that there were like people dressing up as the Snyder characters and like holding up banisters and stuff, which I thought was interesting and cool.
Yeah, and did it ever occur to you that nobody bullied the stars into supporting the Snyder's Cut? Maybe they just wanted to see it, because maybe they actually I don't know, developed a friendship with their former director, something like that, considering they've worked together for roughly 4 years or so.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I think there's like a fan edit called like the Black Suit Edition that's like trying to recreate scenes that have been rumored, like through visual effects and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all right. Then, bada bing, WB announces yesterday that the rabble rousers had won. HBO Max will debut the film sometime in 2021. Okay, why the fuck do you guys sound so like pissy about it?
Condescending.
Yeah, condescending and pissy about it. It happened. Okay, you don't have to like it, but you don't need to be a complete twat about it.
Because when the peasants get what they want, they get what they want through wrong means. Therefore, they're invalid.
Jesus Christ. All right. Anything else to add
People
before I move
preach
on?
decorum, don't you know? And decorum is the only thing in the world that matters, apparently.
Mm.
Fucking hell.
All right. Moving on. Mm. And just like that, something dangerous has been let loose in the world. Not the cut itself, really. Whatever product ends up on Warner Media's HBO Max service under the subheading The Snyder Cut is secondary in importance to the idea of the Snyder Cut being released. Indeed, anyone who reads the lines of Boris Kitt's cleverly restrained report on these new developments in The Hollywood Reporter will notice that there basically is no such thing as a Snyder Cut just yet. One will have to be glued together using a heap of broken images left on scattered hard drives.
And the $40 million that Warner Brothers gave Zack Snyder to fix this, essentially.
Right. I thought there were scenes filmed. It's just
Yeah, there were.
Yeah, and it was Warner Brothers who fucked off those scenes, which I think could have
Yeah,
been.
because as we just established, Warner Brothers is very often their own worst enemy because they want to fix something that isn't broken, or at least isn't broken because it's the genre it is, and might be broken by the fact that Zack Snyder's an edgy, cynical twat.
Right. And again, I'm not disagreeing on Zack Snyder, but at least he has a vision.
Yeah.
It's
And
not the greatest, but at least it's
strong
his.
enough vision that he got a fan base, and that fan base wants shit, and they unironically and uncynically devoted time and energy to getting that shit. But apparently, according to Mr. Reisman here, it's dangerous precedent because if we make a habit of giving the peasants what they want, the peasants might think that they're actually in control and valid people. And if they don't go through the proper channels and go through a bunch of decorum to get what they want, then that might mean that our social norms are irrelevant to things. And to that I say, yes, Mr. Reisman, yes. You are the aristocracy, and nobody outside of the aristocracy is under any obligation to give a fuck what the aristocracy thinks. Because as we just went over, this is America, and we don't need no stinking aristocracy here. Especially not the irrelevant socio-cultural and political kind. And if you're going to be the aristocracy, then I need you to actually do the functional parts of the aristocracy's job, which is to say, noblesse oblige, motherfucker, which means you need to be beholden to the people you rule over, or you sure as fuck don't get to call yourself the cultural aristocracy like you are now.
Ironically enough, I actually kind of tried to make it in the style of the Snyder, of like how Zack Snyder does the movies, like my edits, but I also tried to like just make it seem epic, like an epic of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work out.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Yeah. I did cut a lot of Ezra Miller's Flash dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Ezra Miller, you are a clusterfuck. In and unto yourself.
Well, no, it was the character itself I had an issue with. This was like before all that Ezra Miller bullshit.
Well,
Like
no,
way
but what I'm saying is one of the reasons that version of Flash doesn't work is because of Ezra Miller. He's basically playing a slightly more exaggerated version of himself in that movie.
Ironically, my favorite scene of the guy is the one where, he says, "I just push some people and run away."
Mm-hmm.
Granted, that's more of a thing with Batman, like saying "save one," like being a teacher to him right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right. Or was that? All right. It might be broken up into a kind of epic miniseries for streaming digestibility.
That is not a bad idea.
That
At
actually
all.
sounded fucking close. What the fuck?
Oh, the
Firework
fireworks
idiots.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Bunch of fuckwads. I just no, but that sounded close. Like it sounded real close, and that freaked me out.
Yeah, I would really hate to have to end the show early because a firework accidentally hit your house or something.
I mean, I hope we'd be fine. We're worried about the cars in back.
Yeah, people are morons.
And don't tell me twice.
And hypocrites and ignoramuses and cunts.
All right, so all right. Olivier Assayas Carlos, or that oft retweeted Emma Devane of The Irishman. What the fuck? Stop trying to sound smart, man. It's honestly just coming off as annoying.
You're like, believe me, I have a fairly upscale vocabulary, as everyone knows, and I am not shy about using it, mostly because I can't not
Hey,
use it.
Dalton, you sound a little bit quiet.
Okay, I will move closer to the mic. Is this better?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Everyone knows at this point that I myself have a fairly upscale vocabulary and that I'm not shy about using it, mostly because I am physically incapable of not using it. But there comes a point, sir, at which you are simply growing a bunch of vegetables for word salad. And you're doing so only to inflate your own sense of importance and authority. Well, I can match your wordiness blow for blow, and thereby you have no stinking authority over me. You think you are some professor on high lecturing the plebs because no one has ever had the wherewithal or intellectual capability to challenge you on this shit. But unfortunately for you and fortunately for everyone else, you're not the only one that can play this game. So if we're going to play the pseudo-intellectual bingo game, then I can play too. Have at you then. Moving on. Brainstormer? Brainstormer. I don't know if he left or if I just can't hear him.
Sorry, I had to get some hot dogs.
Okay.
I started talking a little longer, but okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it'll probably be terrible, but whatever. That's not the point. I mean, no real disagreements there.
Like the likelihood of them somehow making something great out of the remnants of the Snyder's Cut with 40 million more dollars is unlikely. That being said, it is a little bit dismissive of you to just go by default, it's going to be shit. Even if all of the evidence at the moment seems to prove that.
Oh, okay.
Moving
Well,
on.
I do want to say, like, it's probably not going to be great, but I think it's going to be better than what we actually got theatrically.
Yeah, it's almost certain at this point that it's probably going to be better.
See, the biggest issue with Justice League, like the theatrical cut, is that it has too many conflicting tones, and it doesn't real, and the pacing seems sluggish.
Yeah, it's a Frankensteinish chimera held together with nothing but chicken wire, basically.
Mm-hmm. Which is a shame because, and we've said plenty about Zack Snyder, but at least he has a vision and follows it through. And Josh Whedon did his best because he wasn't trying to like try not to tell his own thing with Justice League. He was just trying to finish it.
He was trying to be faithful to what Zack Snyder wanted. It just so happened that their artistic visions were diametrically opposed. And also, I'm sure through the process, Warner Brothers was breathing down Joss Whedon's neck because, of course, they were. Because as we established, that until right around the time that Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, and Joker came out, Warner Brothers was very much their own worst enemy. So at least we'll get some kind of facsimile of what Zack Snyder actually wanted to give us. And even if it's not good, I sort of take the opposite opinion of what Mr. Reisman here did. I think that even if it's bad, the fact that studios actually bothered to listen to their fan base, listen to their customers and their fans is a good thing regardless. It's a good precedent rather than a bad one. But don't let me stop you from taking the exact opposite lesson from this, Mr. Reisman. I'm sure you are just that wrong-headed because I'm sure at this point your head is lodged so far up your ass it might as well be in another dimension. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. No, the dangerous thing at work here is a multi-billion-dollar corporation's concession to its worst online critics.
You mean being able to take the slightest bit of criticism and or answering actual fan devotion. People who pay money to a company actually being able to get something out of that company that company is not already predisposed to giving them. You mean people in power being held even the minor bit accountable to their product and their art form in the sense that they make art. God damn you, you aristocratic prick. The peasants will be heard, sir. This is a democracy. It doesn't matter how uncouth and unwashed and dirty you find the peasants to be, the peasants are valid people, and you can't just hand wave away that those who you disagree with are valid people just because you declare it to be so. The world is not comprised of authority, no matter what your critical theory professor in college told you. The world is comprised of logic, merit, and many, many other things long before authority ever comes into the mix. And the more you doggedly insist that nothing but authority matters in the world, the more you are demonstrating that you are essentially a socio-political and cultural aristocrat who needs to be taken down a peg and metaphorically introduced to the socio-cultural guillotine. Because this, once again, is America, and we don't need no stinking aristocracy, especially not the self-appointed and not accountable kind. If you want to be an aristocrat, then I'm going to have to insist you abide by the laws of hospitality and noblesse oblige. If you can't do either of those things, then you may take that oh so artfully coiffed hat of yours and shove it up your pantaloons. Just like any good deposed aristocrat would. Moving on.
Mhm. And I did a quick scroll, and this guy likes to hear himself talk, I'm sure.
They always do.
Yep. Under Snyder's guidance, the DC movie universe, unofficially known thanks to a 2015 joke by an Entertainment Weekly writer, right? The DCEU as a DC extended universe,
Mm-hmm.
Was initially.
Personally, I would have gone with the DCCU, the DC cinematic universe, but that's just me.
I came up with the acronym DC Movieverse, DCMV.
Yeah, well, I don't. I guess the DCEU works fine, so just, I guess leave it alone, or make it official rather, rather than what are they calling it now? Worlds of DC, I think is what they went with. Sounds so stupid.
Either way, it kind of flunked anyway.
Yeah.
So, alright. Was initially envisioned as a tonal counterweight to the far more successful Marvel Cinematic Universe, one that would be weighty, philosophical, and dark, or at least dimly lit.
Yes, we know. They failed to be actually substantive and then just wound up being childish and edgy.
Though
Everyone and their mother knows this about the DC movies at this point.
Yeah.
Especially those DC movies. You don't need to gild the lily by repeating something that everyone already knows and act like you're superior for thinking it as well.
Though I would kind of disagree on the fact that I think there's something there. It's just more of it wasn't properly utilized.
No, it wasn't properly utilized because they had no faith in the actual substance of the comic book genre. They felt the need to fix the comic book genre, even though the comic book genre was not broken. And as I've repeated many times throughout this article, if you take it upon yourself to fix something that is not broken, there is a 60 to 70% chance you're going to break it. I say 60 to 70% chance because there is about a 20 to 30% chance, very rarely, that someone tries to fix something that isn't broken and they end up making an improvement. But that is a vast minority of the time, hence the percentage that I offered. Moving on.
One sec.
Okay.
They really make, they make bread too. Like it's like peanut butter.
Mm.
So sticky and shit. Like when it feels like it sticks to your ribs, you know.
Mm.
Anyway, the Snyder-helmed films that launched the effort were critically derided, both on aesthetic grounds, overabundant slow-mo, barely visible set pieces, even less comprehensible plots. And I don't disagree. I do think that that's Zack Snyder's style, and sometimes his style can be a little too much, but I think maybe even...
I think the bigger issue was how much it screwed over the Superman mythos. I think that honestly pissed off more people than any of the other shit did.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that the other shit wasn't egregious, because it was. As I've often said, Man of Steel is so soul-suckingly dull that I feel like I delete an hour or two from my life every time I try to watch the damn thing.
Ironically enough, I don't mind Man of Steel, though granted, I specifically like some of the scenes with young Clark.
I do wish it had at least been told in order, because if at least it had been told in order, I wouldn't be distracted by the call me artistic gimmick that they were doing every time they tried to cut from one flashback to another flashback. Tell your story sequentially unless there is a substantive reason why you're not, goddammit.
What about an amnesiac Superman?
I suppose that might be a good reason too, but why you would jump to a story about an amnesiac Superman is a little bit beyond me.
I think it's interesting. Like, think Superman, but Memento.
Yeah, but the problem with that is if Superman didn't remember anything, and then presumably he also would forget how to control his powers, and then it'd basically go from Superman but Memento to Superman but Brightburn, because he would forget how to control the powers and would accidentally kill a bunch of people.
Fair enough. What was that? And thematic ones. Superman, an 80-year-old beacon of hope, beacon of humanity's better angels, is portrayed as kind of a dick. Yeah, no,
Okay, yeah. I guess we probably shouldn't cut him off there. He was getting to the effect that it kind of dumped on Superman mythos. But you were still kind of a dick and dismissive about it, so Joe, fuck you.
excuse me. Although the DC movie Enterprise was probably doomed from the start, a flagrant attempt at making movies in service of building a commercially viable franchise, and although the general public had already received Man of Steel and Batman v Superman with shrugs, Snyder Cut partisans became convinced that they preferred Artur's removal from Justice League is where the endeavor went wrong.
No, I think a lot of people just wanted to see uh Justice League come to an organic conclusion rather than a forced one like it was with the hodgepodge of Snyderisms and Whedonisms that we ended up getting.
Right. What was that? The finished movie didn't do justice to Superman's terrifying grandeur, they say. It hewed too closely to the Marvel Disney model of superhero movie making and was thus filled with comedy bits so bad that they're an indictment on where we are as a society. As it's put on a Change.org petition for the Snyder Cut that drew an alleged uh, one 179,260 signatures.
Okay, now again, I would fundamentally disagree with that argument. I would disagree with the actual argument that led these people to this position. However, regardless of the group in question and regardless of the reasons they have for being this devoted to this idea, I still nevertheless believe that it is a good thing that studios are at least incentivized to listen to the people that they are accountable to rather than the almighty dollar, or God forbid their backwards aristocratic moral schemas that they have. Granted, I wouldn't want to live in a world run by nothing but ranting and objectivists either. Personally, I think that the answer to overt moralism isn't just nihilistic, cynical edgelordism, but in a world where there is a sheer overabundance of prissy, emotionally reactionary moralists, I think that cynical edgelords at least should have a right to speak and express themselves. Even if I disagree with both sides of the argument, I do think there should at least be multiple sides to the argument. And even if I disagree with everything that every Snyder Cut supporter ever said, it's still a good precedent for studios to actually bother to listen to their fan bases.
What the? I don't know, but and that was either a firework or someone was closing a trunk really hard.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really tell the difference. Yeah. It sounded a little bit more like a trunk closing or a trunk slamming than a firework, but God only
Either
knows.
way, I know there's gonna be more by the time it's like midnight or something. So these fuckheads were doing these fuckheads were doing it like around 1. It stopped I think at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Fucking hell.
That's how I was. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be extremely difficult. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So moving on.
Yeah.
The reason this conflagration. What?
Conflagration.
I honestly don't know what the.
It basically means like a marshaling of forces or a coming to manifestation.
Okay. Has burned so bright is that it. The reason this conflagration has burned so bright is that it came at an inflection point in a massive cultural war in geekdom. That sentence does not sound right.
No, he's piling on the academic word salad, and even by my standard, it's getting extremely kitschy.
Yeah.
Dude, I know you like to see everything in abstract sociocultural terms, but other people, right, have practical concerns, especially in relation to art, because most people, and I'm not making an ad populum argument, but in general, when people refer to art, they are more concerned with meritocracy than they are with cultural significance. Please pull your head out from the dimension that formed where your colon used to be and out from your ass and look at the world around you. You might find that the peasants have more of a point than you think. Moving on.
Throughout the early 2010s, nerdy products ranging from video games and comic books to, yes, movies, started to events.
I
It's
got nothing.
It's EVINCE.
EVIN. Yeah, I have to give some props there because off the top of my head, I don't remember that. Like, I'm sure it is a word, but I don't remember off the top of my head what that word means. So, well done. You've gone to such a high society Oxfordian level of wordsmithing that I'm genuinely stumped. That does not happen every day. But it does also mean that you're that much of an out of touch quasi-academic prick. So on the behalf of everyone else on the motherfucking planet, use words that can actually be comprehended by someone who didn't digest a thesaurus this morning, please. Or at the very least, provide context clues within the sentence so that people can actually learn the definitions of the words you're using.
So, reveal the presence of a quality or feeling. Reveal, yeah, synonyms are reveal, show, manifest, indicate, display, yada yada.
Okay, so reading it in context, nerdy products begin to advance.
That's different one. Different one. All right. Throughout the early 2010s, nerdy products ranging from video games and comic books to, yes, movies started to evince a greater degree of inclusion for marginalized identities, both in the content and behind the scenes. So, if we were to replace events with reveal or show a greater degree of inclusion. So, wow. Okay. So,
I guess it sort of works, but why of all, like,
it's a really
usually when I use different terminology, it's because the different terminology conveys something more about what I'm saying than a simpler word would. So what extra meaning is being conveyed using the word events than that wouldn't be conveyed by the word reveal or show? That is my question.
I think he just did it to sound smart.
I don't think he even did it on purpose. I think he's just that out of touch at this point. Like, even something like evidence would make more sense in that instance. Like, if it was like geek culture began to evidence more input from marginalized identities, yada yada yada. That would be just as like erudite and poetic, but without the need for even someone like me to go, hang on, I need to double check what that word means. And when even I am going, hang on, I need to double check what that word means, you have lost a significant portion of your audience. I'm not saying the entirety of your audience. I'm sure there are some people in the world who would consider me to be a moron, but I flatter myself that I'm fairly erudite when it comes to wordsmithing myself. So if I'm confused or off put by a word choice, then you done fucked up somewhere, at least. Maybe I'm being an egotistical fuck with myself, but I'm reasonably certain that if I'm confused about word choices, then someone somewhere has done fucked up.
Oh, hey, or not. You're saying on my bad days I make more sense.
I don't know. On your bad days, Chrono, I'm fairly certain that you forget the simple like structure of subject, verb, object in your sentence structure. Like I'm reasonably convinced that on your worst days you forget the syntax of the English language. But that being said, I can at least usually still follow what you're saying when you're in those headspaces.
On
For
my bad
anyone
days,
that
I can't
for
speak.
anyone that doesn't know, Chrono has fairly severe bipolar. So if he gets off his meds, his brain sort of short circuits,
Mm.
and thus why he was saying that. Moving on.
Right. I mean, do we have anything to say about the whole inclusion and mark? Or is that just standard stuff for us? Like the whole.
Well, okay. I did actually have a point about that, but I it got lost in the
Um,
obscurity of his dialect for a second.
do you want me to reread it?
No, I think I think I can go from here. Okay, sir. Much as I do think that something approximating like Randian cynicism is an alternative to the social justice moralism that we see dominating our civilization of late, to conflate the fan out the fan outcry for the Snyder's Cut with the fan outcry for anti-social justice messages is kind of stupid, because see the thing here is you're trying to dichotomize something that isn't dichotomous here, because it's not simply a dichotomy between social justice moralism and edgy cynicism. There is a middle ground there, and I think most of the time the anti-social justice movement, such as many vectors of it exist, come mostly out of that middle ground. As case in point, around the time that anti-social justice content on YouTube and the like became popular, there was another phenomena that became popular that sort of grew out of the social justice v anti-social justice argument, but that was thoroughly dissimilar from that and completely disowned that argument. That was internet blood sport, which was basically a haven for people who didn't care either way or didn't care about anything and simply wanted to be cynical and edgy. A perfect exemplar for it was Mr. Metokur, who essentially believed that because something was limited to the internet, it could never have a real world impact, and that any attempts to be real world substantive from the internet were were in their very nature trying too hard. So he frequently mocked people who were at that point considered to be the skeptics or the anti-social justice movement. I think in this way you're conflating something that would be more equivalent to the internet blood sports crowd to the anti-social justice argument. I'm not saying they're not related. They both oppose social justice moralism and authoritarianism, but they go about it very differently. The skeptic approach was, this is irrational, let's find rational alternatives for the most part. The internet blood sports approach was, nothing matters, so let's just troll everyone and have a good time doing it. Read. And I think you might be conflating people who would ally themselves more with the Mr. Metakers and the Andy Worskis of the world than they would probably the Sargons or the Dr. Randermacans. Just saying. Essentially, you missed out an entire third category, is the long and short of it. You want something to fit into the dichotomy of social justice v anti-social justice, but you completely missed out. There's a third vector of woke hipsters who don't give a shit about either one. The people who willfully refuse to care, as it were. Moving on. And those are the kind of people who would genuinely prefer the Snyder's Cut, probably. Anyway, like I said, moving on.
Well, before we do, Chronon says, you're saying on my bad days, I make more sense.
Sometimes. Like I said, sometimes you forget how the English language works, but sometimes, even on your bad days, you make more sense than this fucker.
Right. Hey, don't feel bad about that, Chrono. I don't speak English very well either.
Well, but you're Hispanic, so you have an excuse.
Now that's racist.
I'm joking, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't take the opportunity to make that joke.
All right, these moves were all told tiny steps, but steps nonetheless. Tiny, huh? Yeah, sure.
You rebranded and co-opted every conceivable geek franchise. And this to you consider tiny. Mind you that you are writing a aristocratic puff piece on your personal opinions about why the peasants shouldn't be given what they want in Screen Rant, which is like one of the biggest three.
No, Vulture.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest geek news websites in the world, and you're being allowed to basically write this shit and presumably get paid for it, which just depresses me. Someone possibly got paid to write this shit.
Jesus Christ, will you idiots stop shooting off fireworks, for fuck's sake. It's not June, it's not goddamn July. What, wait, is it baseball season?
I don't fucking know.
If it's baseball season, then maybe, because I live pretty close to the stadium.
I live right next to a softball field, and that does sometimes, like, people will randomly set off fireworks at weird times around here too, so maybe they're related somehow. But even if it were baseball season, you would think most, like, athletic games and shit would be canceled because of coronavirus.
Fair point. So then it's just probably some assholes in the neighborhood.
Yeah, never attribute to malice what can adequately be expressed by world-rending incompetence.
All right. The industry leader in this regard, though it is still woefully behind where it should be, I think they're talking about Marvel, was zippy, quippy, friendshipy Disney.
Okay, just for the record, you are feeling entirely justified in morally proclaiming over probably the largest franchise in Hollywood at the moment, and definitely the largest company in Hollywood at the moment, that being Marvel and Disney respectively. And you don't understand why people think that you are an out of touch aristocrat. Anyone that can morally proclaim over the top of Marvel and Disney in this day and age is a privileged motherfucker, to use your own terminology back to you. And thereby, no one not in that mind-boggling headspace of privilege needs to give a shit what you say, sir. I hate to use the term privilege because it buys into the social justice woo, but if that's the way I have to phrase it so that you will actually understand what I'm saying, then so be it. You are a privileged cunt who knows no better than anyone else, and you can take your morality and shove it so far up your ass that it comes out of your mouth. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. What followed in the latter half of the decade was a violent reaction to that changing status quo, and hashtag release the Snyder Cut was no insignificant part of that.
Again, the two are not even remotely related, except in a very thin and probably very lateral sort of way. And also, you are the status quo. You are the powers that be. I'm going to run through it again. Once upon a time, the people who controlled the moral zeitgeist of the culture were right-wing, moralizing evangelicals. That, however, was 30 years ago at the very, very latest, and possibly considerably sooner than that, if we're being technical. I'm aware that when you were a teenager and possibly a 20-something, sir, it was genuinely transgressive to fight the right-wing evangelicals on moral grounds. The problem, of course, being that you won the argument. You won the argument, roughly speaking, in the 90s. That's why the 90s were such a great time. Because for a briefest of moments, there were no moralistic cunts trying to control society and culture because something, morality. Unfortunately, because you and your ilk still somehow believe that you are the underdog, you, under the guise of sticking it to the man, became the man, okay? Which means that you are the status quo. And thereby, the grassroots peasants are rising up against you. But because you never acknowledge that you became the status quo, you don't believe you ever became the elites, even though you did, because you can't acknowledge that you are the powers that be, you see people countering your moralistic bullshit as a return to what you consider the status quo to be, which is that right-wing evangelicalism. And incidentally, fuck the right-wing evangelicals even more in some cases than y'all. But I would much rather live in a world where nobody's morality got to bully civilization and culture into whatever direction they felt like. Nobody could go, won't somebody please think of the insert moral MacGuffin here, and then get what they want because moral indignation counts for more than logic. I would rather live in a world where nobody got to shoot people in the head with whatever word they consider to be the appropriate word for sinner today. Whether it's problematic or it's, degenerate, or whether it's, cock, or whether it's, pick a moral word. I would rather live in a world where nobody had to be under any obligation to listen to that shit. But that's just me. But more to the point, you are the status quo. So people arguing against you is not them being reactionary about the status quo changing. It's them saying, keep your moralistic bullshit off of my art and my thing that allows me to get through the day. Because that is what art is for a lot of people. Art is the thing that allows people to know that there's still value in the world and there's still a reason to go on. For a lot of people, that's what art does. And you and your ilk, because you consider culture to be more important than virtually anything, because you consider everything in the world to be created from culture, decided to co-opt and corrupt every bit of culture you could get your hands on, and people understandably flip shit over that because they don't like the things that they like being broken under the auspice of trying to fix something that isn't broken. Because once again, when you try to fix something that isn't broken, there's a 60 to 70% chance you're going to break it. And now you've broken a bunch of shit, and people are trying to get that shit fixed. And that to you seems like them retrogressively turning into traditionalists because you can't acknowledge that you, about 30 years ago, became the status quo. You won the argument, and you can't handle being the actual aristocracy, despite wanting very much, to the very core of your being, to behave like the aristocracy that you can't acknowledge that you are. God damn it. Moving on.
Mhm. All right. Okay. Its backers saw themselves not just as a demanding access to work they wanted to see, but as soldiers on the front lines of the battle against Disney-owned Marvel's predominance and approach, as well as all the ideas those things entail.
Marvel and DC have always been at each other's throats. That is the nature of competition. And it is also the nature, at least part of the nature of fandom. You acting surprised about this is more baffling to me than the fact that this existed. To not understand that Marvel and DC, at least tacitly, oppose each other, and have always opposed each other. And given how successful Marvel has been for roughly about a decade or more now, it is only natural that DC fans would like to see something fairly equivalent that they can latch onto. And frankly, as someone who likes both Marvel and DC, I would like to see them be able to challenge each other. Because in that competition, they will be forced to put their best foot forward and not get complacent or rest on their laurels. The more risks Marvel is willing to take, the further DC has to go to improve. And the more risks DC is willing to take, the more Marvel has to go forward to improve. Having one without the other to counterbalance them would be bad because eventually it would just become the default setting and no one would bother to give a damn anymore. and in so doing, a bunch of bad movies would be created, and all of the cultural shysters saying, "See, we told you comic book movies aren't real movies," would take that as an excuse to rub it in all of our faces that comic book movies can't be good, even though the only reason why they were bad was because they were in an unstable position. Moving on.
Mhm. It's difficult to prove anything about a decentralized movement in the ephemeral world of digital media, but geek writers can confidently report to you that many of the Snyder Cut advocates are the same sorts of people who call out entertainment firms.
Okay, you just acknowledged that you can't say shit about this group.
Actually, I wasn't done yet. I just motherfuckers with the fucking fireworks.
Okay.
Sorry. Entertainment firms for forced diversity and capitulating to the social justice warriors.
As though those things don't happen? Is that the implication you're trying to get away with here? But once again, you're conflating two things that very much aren't necessarily conflated, and in so doing, you're not actually addressing the issue of the Snyder's Cut. And furthermore, I forget what my first point was because we got stopped in the middle of it. Read the first part of that again so I can remember what my point was.
Right. Okay. It's difficult to prove anything about the amount of decentralized movement in the ephemeral world of digital media, but geek writers can confidently report to you that many of the Snyder Cut advocates are the same sorts of people.
Okay. You just got through saying that you cannot definitively say shit about a decentralized group of people on digital social media. And then you bold-facedly went into the assertion that even though you can't definitively say anything about this group of people on decentralized social media, you nevertheless can because of the authority of other geek writers. With no argument. There was no argument in between premise A and premise B. You just admitted to the existence of premise A, and then in complete defiance of premise A, proceeded to premise B without in any way informing us what makes you and other geek writers capable of doing something that you yourself just admitted they should not be able to do. You basically just said human beings aren't physically capable of flight, but let me tell you what men who can fly have just told me. You have outright contradicted yourself, and you have contradicted yourself for no other reason than to assert that you have more authority over this topic than other people do. Never mind that you could just, I don't know, do an interview with some Snyder Cut advocates and see if they fit the mold you're talking about. And if they don't fit the mold you're talking about, then you could consider changing your story. And if they do fit the mold you're talking about, you could go off of their own testimony. But if you did that, you would actually be considering them as valid human beings. And because we all know that aristocrats care more about validity than logic, you cannot validate these people because you consider these people to be bad people and dangerous people. That's the whole impetus behind this article. And incidentally, fuck you for this assertion.
All right.
Moving on.
All right. There is probably more than a little overlap between those. Hold on. This is a word. This is a word. Haranguing. Hold on. I gotta look up this word because it's. Who is? Hold on. Who Haranguing a, I'm sure I'm saying that name, that word wrong. A female hashtag released a Snyder Cut critic, and those doing so to a female Star Wars actor. Just imagine how emboldened and vindicated that sort of troll will now feel in their efforts to, say, reduce a flow of queer, non-white, or female characters into their favorite franchises. And I looked up the word that he was using.
Okay,
Well, I don't even know how to say it. Is the thing.
right. But what is the substance behind it?
Lecture someone or lecture at length in an aggressive and
Maybe
critical
maybe
manner.
the word was haranguing and I just was not paying attention to it.
I think that's it.
Oh,
Harangue.
okay. So that's not a word that is like super out of the ordinary. So I'm not gonna.
I've never heard of it. So
You've never heard haranguing?
nope.
I'm pretty sure I've used it a couple of times, but never mind, I guess. But anyway, number one, that's a bold-faced assertion that you've made out of nowhere, Mr. I forget his name.
Just Mr. Reese.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. Number one, that's a bold-faced assertion that you have completely fabricated out of your own head for reasons that are spurious at best. And number two, even if this connection you are trying to force in people's minds does exist in some cases, either way, it is just a matter of people who you disagree with getting what they want because they are the actual populace of the world. I know it might look from inside your ivory tower, sir, that everyone who's anyone agrees with you, but that's only because whenever anyone offers you a contrary opinion, you ignore or invalidate them in some way because they're not being decorous about it. They're not phrasing their assertions in perfect poetic triplicate and so on and so forth. They're using simple base language and allowing themselves to get infected with this thing we call passion and emotions. And because they're saying it in an uncouth, dirty, unwashed way, you don't think you should have to listen. But unfortunately, blocking these people from your sphere of social influence does not in turn block them from the universe. These people still exist, and because there is enough of them, and because they have enough of a point to make an impact, they are going to have one. But once again, I just want to point out that that is me humoring you and assuming that your conflation makes any kind of sense. That you can actually demonstrate that there's a connection between people who are anti-SJWs and people who like the Snyder Cut. But in either case, the solution is simple. Listen to them and they might be less angry towards you. Or at least determine what parts of their point are valid and what parts of their point aren't valid, not by some sociocultural authority, but by simple logic and reasoning. Actually utilize your brain instead of utilizing your moral indignational impulse for every decision you make. But if you did that, you might have to come to terms with the fact that you are out of touch with the peasants. And who is out of touch with the peasants? The aristocracy. Whether that be a cultural aristocracy or an actual, gentry aristocracy. And you might actually have to come to terms with the fact that you are the status quo if you did that. And that would just break your fucking brain, wouldn't it? Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. What brings us to the other harsh truth here about where we are as a body public. Wait, body. What? Jesus Christ! As a body politic.
Yes, that's a valid phrase. It's not super obscure. But okay, sir, you have just asserted that you are part of the body politic. You are not part of the body politic, sir. You are essentially a politician without the actual politics. That is what I mean when I say you are a cultural aristocrat. All this academic lingo you're spouting, all of this moral abstract indignation you have, all this concern over cultural trends and cultural impact as opposed to practical trends and practical impact, that is a demonstration to me that you long ago forwent your position in the body politic. The body politic essentially just means like the unwashed masses or the way the cultural zeitgeist is going. And unfortunately, sir, you can't be in a position of authority and also part of the body politic. The body politic is by its very nature separated from the politicians who shape politics. That's what the body politic means. It essentially means the masses or the culture. You can't be a figurehead of the culture and also part of the culture at the same time, at least not in the terminology you're using. But you wouldn't know that because you refuse to acknowledge that you are now the status quo. You are the aristocracy. You are the powers that be. And the more you insist that you're not and that you're still fighting those big bad traditionalist evangelicals from the 90s and earlier, the more you insist of that, the more of an out of touch aristocrat you're going to make yourself. You are no longer part of the body politic. If anything, this is a demonstration clear as day of it. And the body politic itself is telling you to fuck yourself because you are an out of touch aristocrat that no longer has any conception of what people actually want and how people actually want to conduct themselves. Deal with it. It's called a grassroots movement. You used to know what those were about when you were marching for gay marriage and so on and so forth. Back when you actually had a cause to fight for and not just a culture to maintain control over. Moving on.
Mhm. The way Snyder advocates have pushed for their version of choice are ultimately being rewarded. To put it bluntly, although they're not quite as abusive and bloodthirsty as Gamergate, their campaign has led to a tremendous amount of online bullying of critics, executives, and average schmoes who don't agree with them.
Gamergate wasn't abusive either. That was also the actual body politic disagreeing with you in a way that you didn't consider it was possible to disagree with you. And everything about your indignation here is all about the way things are phrased, the way things are presented, the way things are put together, rather than the actual substance of the argument. That's how you can tell that you're an aristocrat, because aristocrats care more about decorum than substance. The lay people, the peasants, the unwashed masses want you to get to a goddamn point, and in so doing, they don't really give a shit about how things are phrased as long as the substance of what they're saying is conveyed effectively. But because you don't want to believe that you are out of touch with the masses, you think that everyone who disagrees with you is just being rude, rather than the actual case, which appears to be that you have become an uptight aristocrat who is more concerned with decorum than substance of thinking. Well, here among the plebs, we care more about why we say what we say rather than how we say what we say. And the fact that you're essentially doing nothing but tone policing the masses demonstrates to me that you are essentially like Marie Antoinette. You are commanding the peasants to eat cake, not understanding that they don't have any bread to begin with. And if you don't have any bread, how on earth do you think there are resources enough to make cake? The correct answer, of course, for anyone that knows how this metaphor works, is because you, as the metaphorical Marie Antoinette in this example, have grown so accustomed to cake that you no longer know what it's like to be starving for bread. And thereby you don't understand why the peasants are so angrily screaming, "We would prefer to have bread," while you calmly and nonchalantly and decorumfully explain, "Let them eat cake." You dipshit. Moving on.
What was that? Just ask Diane Nelson. She used to be the president of DC Entertainment and the WB brand responsible for managing superhero content. And when she tweeted that last year's DC/WB film Joker was what DC should have been doing since Nolan, referring to director Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, which concluded in 2012, right before Snyder rebooted everything, she faced a torrent of written abuse that drove her to delete her Twitter account.
Now, this is where there is actually some nuance here, because generally speaking, I agree more with this woman. I agree more with this woman. Joker and the likes of Joker are very much what DC should have been doing all along. But I see no reason why you can't give the Snyder Cut people what they want, and also the Joker enthusiasts what they want. And incidentally, in case you forgot, there was a really big stink when Joker came out that it was in favor of the anti-SJWs. So where are the anti-SJWs congregating in your mind, sir? Are they congregating in the people that like Joker that the media didn't like at that time? Or are they congregating in the Snyder Cut people? Or both? Are you genuinely that fucked in the head that literally everyone who disagrees with you has to be on the same side, even if they disagree with each other, because you are that fucked in the head and that myopic when it comes to being able to comprehend people who disagree with you? Are you really that fucked in the head that everyone who disagrees with you, even when they disagree with each other, has to be on the same side? And if it so happens that some people who agree with the Snyder's Cut also liked Joker, how exactly do you like them apples? People who disagree with you seem to be on the right side of more than one issue, while you are on the right side of 0 issues. Should that perhaps tell you anything? And also, just pointing this out, because I know it's going to fuck with your head later, who are you defending? You are defending a president of a multinational entertainment company. Meanwhile, the peasants are screaming about not getting the things that they want. Do you not perhaps see why I consider you a part of the aristocracy now? Because rather than defend the people who are angrily screaming at the president of a company, you're defending the president of that company instead. Do you not see how that's the wrong way around? Has it been so long since you believed in a grassroots cause that you don't understand why, generally speaking, the people who are in the right generally aren't the people who are standing on high proclaiming shit? Because people who stand on high proclaiming shit generally do so because they have nothing better to do. Moving on.
Asked former DC chief creative officer and movie exec Jeff Johns, who has been held up as the scapegoat for the loss of Snyder's vision. Okay, that's stupid. I don't think he has been, honestly.
Well, I mean,
anyway.
he was held accountable for in some ways contributing to it, which I think is fair. So I don't see any, like, there's no disproportionality there,
Right.
as shocked and dismayed as he wants to be about it.
But honestly, I think he's been just as screwed over by Warner Brothers, like some other.
And in the cases where he has been screwed over more than you think he should be, it's probably because he is so self-centered that he wants everything to be part of his vision. And unfortunately, his vision isn't as fantastic as he seems to think it is.
Wait, who? Jeff Johns or Zack
Jeff
Snyder?
Johns.
Oh.
Moving on.
Uh, and is regularly exonerated by conspiracy-minded YouTubers and bloggers. Ask any critic, big or small, who has dared to speak ill of Snyder. Motherfucking bitches!
Oh, fireworks.
God, I fucking hate those assholes.
You might even say you have an explosive temper. Because fireworks, explosions.
Yeah, no, I got it. Just wasn't funny.
I'm sorry. I'm amazed it's taken me this long to come up with a pun.
See, I can mind the firecrackers and bottle rockets and shit. It's the fucking mortars. Why? Why the fucking mortars?
Maybe they're just mortified.
That was just terrible.
I know. I'm sorry.
Like, that was really low effort.
I'm sorry. I'm having to expend way too much time and effort dealing with this person's stupid shit. I'm running low on my ability to pun.
Like, Dom, you gotta feel like I feel terrible for yourself, man. Like I feel terrible for you that was just that was like
Yes, I know. I should try better in future, but for now, let's finish this guy's fucking stupid bullshit.
all right. Ask any critic, big or small, who has dared to speak ill of Snyder and his work. They'll likely tell you about all the angry tweets accusing them of being biased and received Marvel payola.
Yes, it's called fandom. And as no one working at these supposed geek websites ever been a fan of anything. Part of fandom is getting upset at people who crap all over your shit. And some people who get upset over people crapping on their shit are not polite about it. Once again, I must ask, has it been so long since you were one of the plebs that you completely forget how grassroots anger works? Moving on.
Yep. All right. If you want a larger accounting of all the ways in which these people can be shitty to other humans online, pursue this excellent roundup by Jim M. Carter, and you'll get a sense of what we're talking about.
Everyone is shitty to everyone online. That's one of the reasons that online exists as a means to help people deal with their extra anger as an outlet.
We're not technically saying that.
We're not saying that it's necessary or justified or whatever, but you're acting as though you and your ilk are specially aggrieved and not just dealing with a fundamental force of the internet. Everyone gets trolled, everyone gets memed, everyone gets gifted, everyone gets lambasted. When that happens, you have two options. Return fire and out-troll the trolls, or just ignore the shit out of them. Or, and this is perhaps the third option that I wish more people would consider, maybe see beyond the anger and the the violation of decorum and consider people's assertions based on what point they're trying to make. And when they make a point, you could actually deal with them on rational terms rather than just getting emotionally and morally indignatious over it. But maybe I'm just old-fashioned. Maybe I'm weird that when people yell at me, I actually want to understand why they're fucking yelling rather than just get upset that they're yelling. Moving on.
Yep. All that said, and all my fight about the Snyder Cut typically isn't going to lead to as much digital bloodshed as, say, one about Trump or BTS. What's at issue is the precedent that's being set. WB and parent conglomerate Warner Media are, in essence, telling the world, if you attack a multi-billion-dollar corporation often enough and make it clear that you'll harass anyone who stands in your way, that corporation will eventually give up and throw you what you want. Oh, for fuck's sake, that's what they do to you assholes.
Yes, and also, isn't that a good thing that multinational companies are like accountable to like people? Because judging from your particular indignation, sir, I'm betting that you're the type of person who doesn't like corporations most of the time. And again, judging by your own framing of this discussion, I can reasonably assume that once upon a time you considered yourself to be one of the mavericks, one of the unorthodox people who fought the powers that be. And now you're complaining that when other people who aren't you fight the powers that be listen to them. That, in and of itself, my good sir, sounds like a just universe to me. When things get bad is generally when multinational corporations stop listening to the people. When you can't just get out your anger at a corporation by yelling at it. Generally speaking, the day when people start getting censored for their opinions is the day when we're entering a totalitarian state, and I don't want to live in 1984. I would much rather live in a world where Big Brother was accountable to the inner and outer party, frankly. Because if Big Brother was accountable to the inner and outer party in 1984, then 1984 wouldn't be such a fucking terrifying post-apocalyptic future. But you are actually that fucked in the head that because you disagree with people, you will flip your entire worldview on its ass just to say that people who you disagree with shouldn't be listened to. Even though you probably deep down hate corporations and understand that corporations are a bad thing, you would still rather a world where corporations had all the power in the world than a world where they might listen to people who aren't you. And I would imagine that if, for example, you started a social justice petition and they didn't listen to you, you would be writing an article saying about how corporations need to get their shit together and listen to the people. But because in this case, you aren't part of the people and the people are people you disagree with, you will flip that entire sector of your worldview on its head just to fuck over people you disagree with. But yeah, generally speaking, the same reasons you consider it to be a bad precedent are the same reason I consider it to be a good one. People should listen, and by people I include like people in power. People in power and corporations and organizations should listen to the plebs. The very moment they don't listen to the plebs anymore is the moment where we need to start a revolution. And I bet if I approach you on any other topic, you would agree with that statement. But because it's people you disagree with. Some reason now you're on the side of the multinational corporations, even though you know deep down that multinational corporations are soulless shitheads. It's frankly infuriating and flustering that your principles are this much for sale. As long as the corporation is listening to you, everything is hunky-dory. But when the corporation starts listening to everybody, all of a sudden the corporation shouldn't listen to anybody, because then the people you disagree with won't be listened to. Fuck you in so many dimensions that you literally break into atoms. And then your atoms break into quarks, and the quarks break into nothing but energy. Fucking atomize yourself, you stupid, impulsive, hypocritical cunt. Have principles, and then we'll have a conversation. Until you can develop the principle that things that apply to other people also apply to you, and things that apply to you also apply to other people, we cannot have a conversation, because I can't be bothered to teach you grade school logic over and over and over again every time we have a conversation. You stupid, oblivious pissant. Moving on.
All right. What was I? You miss. Sorry. Okay. All right. In fact, WB has, in its way. No, I'm not. Whatever. Institutionalized this kind of behavior and dubbed it enthusiasm rather than abuse, whether they meant to or not.
Because it is enthusiasm. You are the one who's framing it as abuse. And you can't just assert that, because authority isn't what makes things true. Logic and reason are what makes things true. If you want to dub something abuse, you have to demonstrate that it's abuse. Until you demonstrate that it's abuse, it's going to be defaulting to either enthusiasm or some other third thing. That doesn't. The reason why I say it might be diagnosed as some other third thing is because just because something isn't negative doesn't mean it's positive, and just because something is positive doesn't, or just because something might be positive doesn't mean it's not negative, and so forth. There is a middle ground there. But you are the one asserting that it's negative. You have yet to demonstrate that it's negative. All you've done is assert repeatedly that it's negative. So the fact that it is enthusiasm to some other people is equally as valid, in my opinion, as your assertion that it's negative. Because all that separates your opinion from other people's opinion is authority. And authority without logic or reason or evidence does not matter. It is essentially trying to conjure will and power out of nowhere. And you can't just conjure power out of nowhere and expect that power to be heeded. If you want that power to be validated by people, you actually have to tether it to some semblance of reason, or at the very least value. But oh, I'm sorry, I forget. You guys are the people who don't believe that value exists, and why I need to do the job that I do. As long as there are oblivious, stupid, pissant cunts saying that value doesn't exist, there will be an authenticator to point out, guys, value though.
It's hard to
Moving
escape.
on.
It's hard to escape the feeling that WB has unleashed something beyond their control. And yet, the more I ponder this grim situation, the more I find myself seeing it as foreordained. For one thing, there's the COVID-19 factor. With production on hold across the film industry, WB and its ilk are panicking over their impending lack of new content to push. Ergo, Disney's decision to release Hamilton direct on to Disney Plus, although the failings of Hamilton fandom are another story entirely.
Okay, sir. Going back to the beginning of your statement, you are getting absolutely aghast at the notion that there is a force beyond WB's control. Again, I must ask, are you the sort of person who is against the totalitarian control of corporations? If not, I suppose that's fine, but I'm going to need to see an argument as to why it's not bad. And if you are the sort of person, like I suspect, that is extremely far to the left and thereby hates corporations with a passion that burns with the white-hot intensity of 1,000 suns, why the fuck do you want to give corporations the power to control literally everything? Why are you getting so fucked in the head over the fact that there's something a corporation can't control? Because speaking as a left-leaning libertarian myself, and someone who supported Bernie Sanders for the record, I must point out that generally speaking, when corporations can't control something, that is a good thing. And yes, I know the phrase "that's a good thing" has become a meme because Bernie Sanders accidentally said it about red lines that one time, and I don't fucking care. But my point is, generally speaking, when the powers that be can't control something, that is what we call, in America, a free society. When the powers that be can't just step on your face and say that your human rights are conditional on because we want them, that's a good thing. It's called individualism and a free civilization. And quite frankly, I'm kind of partial to free civilizations. So I would rather that nobody had the power to just dictate what society and culture did from the comfort of their own perches, basically. You can't just put something on a pedestal and then act like it's better than all the other things. But once again, I'm baffled by the notion that you probably are the sort of person that understands that corporations are bad as a general rule, or at the very least they should be monitored very closely so that they don't become horrible totalitarian shit stains. But you are willing to sell out your hatred of corporations, or at least your caution about corporations, if those corporations are willing to stand against people you dislike and won't listen to people you dislike. But you still expect, I would imagine, that come the next, I don't know, LGBT Pride Month, every corporation will put rainbow flags on every fucking thing. And if they don't, then that will be problematic and homophobic somehow. I'm thoroughly convinced of it. If a corporation does something you don't want, then you automatically change your tune and say they should listen to the people. But when the people includes people you don't like, then all of a sudden you're in favor of corporations having almost godlike totalitarian power. And it fucking scares me and frustrates me, let alone showing yourself to be an immensely dense human being and a worthless, dyspraxic cunt. Moving on.
The Snyder Cut is the rare piece of content that can, in theory, be assembled and pushed as a major event without requiring new filming. With HBO Max on the way and in need of flashy initial offerings, such content is worth its weight in gold, even if the long-term price paid in the relationship between fans and creators is far more exuberant.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't like he's trying to make the point that it's like pragmatic, which sort of invalidates his entire point here. So I don't know. Like I'm once again left with the immortal question of what in an entire field of fucks are you saying, sir?
I mean, I'm assuming he has a very extreme left-leaning point of view, and as we know of people of those kind of viewpoints, they tend to ramble on to the point where they make no sense in their writings.
Well, again, I am on the left politically speaking.
I said
Like,
I did say extreme.
yeah, but yeah, it honestly seems like he's trying to talk himself out of his own position so that he can be calm about it. But the fact that he's so angry about A, corporations not being able to control something, and B, people who he dislikes getting something that he doesn't want them to have is more terrifying than the fact that he has to rationalize. Like, the fact that he has to rationalize himself out of it, not by seeing his fellow human beings as fellow human beings, but by making excuses for why it's not going to happen the way he expects it's going to happen is more terrifying than anything, honestly. It's like someone trying to convince the it's like someone being so afraid of like someone cursing them that they have to convince themselves that magic doesn't exist at all.
Right.
It's like
So sorry.
yeah, it's another case of this person is so afraid that they're literally willing to throw away an entire part of reality just to coddle themselves, basically. It's really, really disingenuous, and I hate it.
Right. Okay. So we are since this is a really long article, I'm afraid we are going to have to stop after finishing up the paragraph we're on now and continue it next week because we have one last article and I kind of want to end on a high note.
Okay.
And it's also a time thing. And motherfucking little bitches.
And more fireworks.
God, those assholes.
I guess you should be glad that it's not gunfire.
Fair enough. Still fucking annoying.
Yeah, but at least it's not annoying in a way that's liable to get you killed if you go out there and try and tell people to knock it the fuck off.
Right, okay. Then there's the narrow casting factor. In our fragmented media landscape, entertainment firms long ago realized that your best bet is to cater to your most devoted and vocal fans who will show up no matter what, rather than trying to satisfy the broad and ideal audience.
You mean the people that actually give the slightest fuck about the material you're selling them? Yes, generally speaking, it is a good idea to pitch primarily to those people. And here's the thing. If you pitch at the fans of something that already, like, if you pitch towards the people that are already fans of something, then it's just as likely that the people who consider a given IP to be valuable will have a point, and that in showing whatever they found to be meaningful on a larger scale, you'll get a larger audience. Because a lot of people don't actively dislike things. A lot of people are just ignorant of the existence of things. So if you show people that didn't previously know that something existed a good rendition of that thing, and it has the same quality that got its fan base interested in the first place, you'll broaden the fan base because people who didn't know that that thing existed but would otherwise like it become aware of it and therefore like it. But if you change the fundamental nature of a source material in such a way that pisses off its core fan base, you might just get rid of any quality that was in there to begin with. And then the people who didn't know what that thing was to begin with will be turned off permanently by that thing because they will associate it not with the qualities of the source material that they otherwise probably would like, but with the horribly bastardized version that Hollywood decided to serve up because Hollywood assumed it knew better. That's why many of the early examples of superhero movies were terrible. Not because the actual source material wasn't a valid source material to base movies off of, but because the source material and the movie was so different that the people who didn't know about the source material were turned off, not because it was too different from what they wanted or whatever, but because you took out everything that made the source material good, and then unsurprisingly, because you took out everything that was good about the source material, there was nothing good left, and a bunch of people who didn't like it to begin with permanently became predisposed to not liking it. Because once again, if you try to fix something that isn't broken, there's a high probability that all you're going to do is break it. And if you go into an IP assuming that it's already broken, you might just piss off all the people that defend it for not being broken and lose any opportunity to convince people that this thing you're presenting them isn't broken. Moving on.
Right. Okay. So, add in the support of WB tentable holders like Gal Gadot. No, wait, it's Gadot, right? Gal Gadot.
I honestly don't know. I'd have to. You'd have to ask her, honestly, and I'm pretty sure someone has asked her, and I don't have the wherewithal to look it up.
Gal Gadot, and the brew gets even more heady. I don't know what that means, but that's the last of that paragraph.
He's saying that because he considers Gal Gadot to be a good thing, if you throw her into something he considers to be a bad thing, then it becomes conflicted.
Right.
Or
So,
you could just consider that the thing you consider to be a bad thing isn't a bad thing and that you were actually wrong about something. You stupid, ignorant, oblivious, moronic pissant.
okay. But yeah, that's gonna be it for us on that article. We'll continue. We'll finish it off next week because we have a time thing, and also it's just. I think we just need.
Brainstormer insisted on ending on a positive note, and as I'm sure entertaining as hearing me deconstruct this person's bullshit is for y'all, it's not what Brainstormer would define as positive. So we're moving on to a different story.
Don't act like it isn't draining you mentally.
I mean, it is, but it has also been a while since I had a good old-fashioned opportunity to rant at somebody. So
Fair enough, but we will finish it because it's an article that you just gotta finish ranting about.
like that's the kind of article that comes up only once or twice in every so often, and I feel like if we just left it, it would
It'd be a disservice to us.
yes, and the audience, because I'm sure the audience has gotten a kick out of my excessive ranting.
Right. So this isn't really, honestly, we couldn't really find a lot that would technically be positive, but it's something interesting, I think. Sony, this is from Screen Rant. Sony Spider-Man movie jackpot in development from Arrowverse creator. This is by Sandy Schaefer, published March 21st, 2020. So Sony recruits the Arrowverse's co-creator Mark Guggenheim to write a movie adaptation of the Spider-Man Jackpot spin-off comic book series.
That's a very odd choice to pick, but oh
Well,
well.
who knows? Maybe they could change up the character a bit.
Maybe I'm just saying, like of all the like Spider-Man properties you could pick, you pick Spider-Man Jackpot, which until doing some research for this article I hadn't even heard of.
Yeah, same here actually. But I don't know. I am always willing to check out new. Well, not new, but like I guess new kind of someone like something off the beaten path of a superhero property.
I just want as long as Spider-Man is with the MCU and Doctor Strange is with the MCU, somebody do an adaptation of Spider-Man Fever, where Spider-Man gets a mystical spider cold and Doctor Strange has to fight a spider demon for his soul. I want an adaptation of that. Somebody make that. As long as we're going with really obscure.
How many fucking fireworks do those assholes have?
Enough to annoy you.
They're going on for the last, I don't know, 3 or so hours.
Well, they've only been doing like 1 or 2 every couple of minutes, though, so that might explain it.
Seriously.
It's not like they did a big finale yet.
Yeah, but it's like the same stuff over and over again. Mortars, firecrackers. I'm assuming Roman candles.
Yeah, they probably got a bunch on bulk somehow because I would imagine fireworks are extremely cheap anytime it's not the 4th of July. They a bunch of stoners probably probably got fireworks on bulk and decided to just randomly fucking shoot them off because they were bored during quarantine.
Yeah. All right. So
I have had friends that are stoners. They do in fact think that way.
Sony has hired Mark Guggenheim to write a movie adaptation of the Spider-Man Jackpot comic books. After trying and failing to turn the Amazing Spider-Man movies into a shared universe in the mid-2010s, which I think could have worked if Sony wouldn't be complete dicks to Mark Webb and let him make
Yeah,
his
and
movies.
try to fix what's not broken.
Yeah. The studio struck an unpleasant deal to share the rights to Spider-Man with Marvel Studios. Things have gone much smoother since then, and allowing Sony to begin construction on a new cinematic universe, one that was recently dubbed the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel characters. That's not a fucking mouthful.
That is the most convolutedly stupid name for anything I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, honestly, just call it the Universe of Marvel characters.
Or just get your head out of your ass, Sony, and give shit back to Marvel.
No, fuck it. I after Far From Home, Marvel doesn't deserve Spider-Man and its characters.
Well, but Sony has not a very good track record for it either, so.
Fair enough, but that's because people in charge are kind of dickwads, but I would prefer Sony over Marvel right now. Well, Disney.
Well, but at least Marvel has Kevin Feige, whereas with Sony, you're stuck with Amy Pascal and Abby a fucking Arad.
Yeah, fair enough, but I don't know. I think it's just those guys need to fuck off, and someone who actually knows fucking actually someone like Kevin Feige who likes Spider-Man a lot.
Honestly, I thought the team of Lord and Miller did a really good job with Spider-Verse, but that's because I'm convinced Phil Lord and Chris Miller can make a movie out of anything awesome. They made the Lego movie franchise for fuck's sake.
Yep. All right. So what was that? With the live-action Venom spinoff and animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. With the movie rights to more than 9,000 Marvel characters under their belt, the studio is currently developing a wide range of Spider-Man related projects, including those based around comparatively obscure superheroes like Morbius the Vampire, whom Jared Leto is playing in next year's Morbius film adaptation. We've already talked about that, so we're not
For
really.
the record, Morbius is a villain, so to call him a hero is kind of stupid.
I'd say he's more of an anti-hero than anything.
Well, I'm sure they're going to try and spin him as an anti-hero, but that's a fairly recent thing in the comics. Anyway, well, while we're asking for things, someone make a Madam Web movie. I want a Madam Web movie.
Actually, there has been talks about that.
I want Madam Web. Someone give me Madam Web.
Who would you cast?
What the fuck is the name of the woman who plays Archer's mom in Archer? I can't think of her name.
Mallory.
Well, yeah, I know the character's name, but the actress's name, I mean.
Hold on.
I think it's Jennifer Walters. I might be wrong.
Looking it up. Jessica Walter.
Jessica. I knew it was something Walter, but I couldn't. Yeah. Yeah, her. She's an excellent Madam Web. And come to think of it, she might have been the voice for for Madam Web in the original Spider-Man Spider-Man in the animated series, which is the version of Madam Web I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the version of Madam Web that's basically a fortune teller. I'm talking about the version of Madam Web that's kind of a fortune teller, but also a cosmic entity, because that's just sheer fucking awesomeness.
Mm-hmm.
Make Madam Web.
All right. Movies based on similarly lesser known characters like Nightwatch, Silk, and Jackpot are also reported to be in the early stages of development, and it appears that at least one of them is currently taking the next step forward. I don't know much about Nightwatch. Silk, I would be interested if they were to. My main problem with Silk is that it's an interesting concept, like a character who's been, kind of like, you know what? Anyone who has watched Netflix, which I'm assuming most people have, if anyone knows the show Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt,
Yes.
something like that, but a little less goofy and upbeat,
Mm-hmm.
and also add the comic book element to it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an interesting character, someone who basically grew up like for 20 years and is stuck in like this kind of time that's moved on.
Mm-hmm.
A person at a time. Granted, that's a couple different characters from other movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I think
the Man Out of Time is very, very old. Like it goes back even further than like Mark Twain, a Canadian Yankee in King Arthur's Court and so forth.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and I really would like to see it with like a superhero, not just like Captain America, because I'll be honest, I think he kind of adapted a little too quickly to modern technology and stuff. In the Marvel movies, granted, there are probably years or stuff in between.
Well, he to be fair to him, he was in his 20s when he was frozen in ice. So like his early 20s. So if there's going to be a person who's going to adapt to new technology, it's going to be a 20 something. The thing with the greatest the greatest generation now that prevents them from fully adapting to new technology is they've had 70 plus years of living in between then and now. So they're used to the old days.
Okay, so we have someone new here in the chat. Bat City Stuff. In the Air cut, David Ayer, there is 20 or 30 minutes of the natural, sad, and scary progression of Dr. June Moon's possession by the Enchantress. We would have gone a scary, unpredictable, brutal Joker.
Yeah, hopefully the Ayer cut is the next is the next cause du jour.
Well, I still think, honestly, Joker should have been the main villain of Suicide Squad.
Oh yeah, without question. There's
Yeah.
no earthly reason why. Like, not only did they fuck up putting the Suicide Squad against the Enchantress, but they also robbed the Justice League Dark of their first villain in the comics. Because the first villain in the comics, the Justice League Dark, assembled to thwart was the Enchantress.
Right. So I don't know. It would make more sense, like place villains against villains. That'd be more interesting to see.
Or just have a movie set in like Arkham Asylum and have Waller be the villain.
So it'll be like what, like a Shawshank Redemption, but with superheroes? Well, supervillains.
Kind of, yeah.
That actually sounds pretty cool, to be honest.
Like how was the first impulse for Suicide Squad not a Prison Break movie? Like where she instead of she puts the explosive in only the teammates' heads, you could have it where like in a very high security prison she puts
You know what would be interesting? What would actually be pretty interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And keep it in the prison, but not Arkham Asylum. Have it be Belle Rev.
Yeah.
And Waller is like a secondary antagonist, while the Joker is the primary antagonist.
Yeah.
He gets transferred to Belle Rev from Arkham, and Harley Quinn is transferred with him because she's his psychiatrist.
Main squeeze, yada yada yada.
Right, but we see the transformation of Dr. Harleen Quinzel to Harley Quinn within the movie.
Or have Joker be the main antagonist, but have Dr. Quinzel fall from grace in the movie.
Isn't
And
that kind of what I said?
have Joker use Dr. Quinzel as his person on the inside to thwart Waller and get them all out.
Bat City stuff. Joker was the main villain, and he was trying to manipulate the Enchantress and stealing her power.
Okay, that's just stupid. Joker wielding magic is kind of like Batman wielding magic, where I feel like both of them would consider it unnecessary. Plus, if Joker ever got a substantive supply of magic, he would basically become a Lord of Chaos.
It was
Maybe-
reworked in the reshoots. That's what he says.
Mm.
Yeah, okay. Deadline is reporting Guggenheim has been hired to write a Jackpot movie for Sony. In addition to being the co-creator of the CW's Arrowverse, Guggenheim has worked on the Jackpot comics before and contributed to a wide variety of comic books, video games, and TV shows in the past.
Okay, well, that being the case, I have to say, good job for one, Sony. Hopefully, I don't get disappointed.
Oh, dude, you're gonna like this. You're gonna like this. With his recent non-Arrowverse projects, including Netflix's animated Troll Hunters: Tales of Arcadia franchise and Amazon Prime's fantasy series Carnival Row.
Okay, now you have my attention.
Yeah. All right.
Though
First,
I will admit, Carnival Row is sort of iffy, in my opinion. Anyway.
Well, that's why it was second, I assume.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. You saw it, right? I mean, we covered it for like a trailer, but
Yeah, the trailer unfortunately wasn't misleading. It's just kind of it's trying to be like the next Game of Thrones, but it's not really doing anything.
honestly, and never mind. I was gonna harken back to Fort Salem and like that idea we had come up with. Like, never mind. I lost it. I lost the idea.
Okay.
The first character to adopt the Jackpot superhero moniker when the Marvel comic book series kicked off in 2007 was Sarah Ehret, a scientist who's working on a cure for Parkinson's disease when she's exposed to a substance which gives her super strength.
Okay, why is she called Jackpot, please?
Much like Peter Parker, Sarah finds herself struggling to live up to the responsibilities that come with having super abilities and wanting to lead a normal life, including raising her first daughter, Madeline, whom she was pregnant with during the accident.
Okay, someone explain to me why she's called Jackpot then, because
Honestly,
my thinking was she would have some kind of probability manipulation powers, which would explain why she's called Jackpot, because she could game casinos and shit.
You know what's funny? My mind went to like Mary Jane, and she used it as a when she became a superhero at one point, and the whole you hit the jackpot, tiger.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and my first impulse was probability manipulation, making money.
I mean, if you look at the pictures, it's a redhead young woman. I mean, how do you not think Mary Jane?
Because I don't default to Mary Jane when I see any redhead, unfortunately.
Well, no, I mean like it's a character related to Spider-Man, I assume,
Mm-hmm.
and Jackpot and stuff. I thought it was like a Mary Jane thing,
Mm.
All right. Bat City stuff. The Air Cut is going to be an R-rated, extremely dark, scary look at supervillains, as seen in the Suicide Squad Comic-Con first look. aka the I Started a Joke trailer. That was actually a pretty good trailer for what could have been.
Yeah, yeah. If only Warner Brothers wasn't their own worst enemy and trying to fix what wasn't broken in the first place.
Alright, so Jackpot is one of a handful of Spider-Man spin-offs. Sony is reportedly aiming to hire a woman to direct, and for valid reason.
Sigh.
See, again, I'd be okay with it if it was just if it was for the merit of the director themselves. Like
Yeah.
Patty Jenkins.
Yeah, she has definitely shown herself to be the definitive like female director. And I still live in woe that we didn't ever get to see her version of Thor the Dark World because she was originally supposed to write Thor the Dark World and Hela was supposed to be the villain. But
Oh, or Deborah Chow. And if I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sorry. She's worked on episodes of The Mandalorian and has kind of started a resurgence with The Walking Dead.
yeah, there are so many good female directors to pick, but the fact that you need to relegate them to female directors rather than just picking whatever the best director for the job would be under the auspices of some sort of female hive mind is really fucking annoying.
All right. Story-wise, the property explores the struggles of balancing work, and in this case, superheroics, with being a mom. And Dalton disappeared.
My phone
Internet
is fucked
acted
up.
weird.
Yeah, my phone.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're almost done, I think. So it's kind of a standard superhero story, if anything.
I am a little bit worried about the like I'm not saying like a superhero version of Mr. Mom couldn't work or the like, but it's sounding really pandering to me.
How so?
Like it's like it's sort of similar to that why a female director doesn't really work. It's fine to have a subplot or a running theme of like balancing superheroics with real life shit. But if that's literally if that's your starting premise, then you might be paying a little bit too much attention to it.
You know what's funny? It kind of reminds me of a character I was working on myself, actually.
Mm.
Granted, there's a little difference because there's an element of tragedy to the character.
Mm-hmm.
Single mom because she's a widow. It's also super.
Oh, okay, this character. I remember you telling me about her.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was basically the character. A single mom, a widow who has to help her kids move on from that kind of tragedy
Mm-hmm.
of the father dying. And to add insult to injury for the character, she was there when her husband died, but couldn't save him because she had to save other people.
Ouch.
Yep. God, I can be an evil bastard to characters when I'm writing them.
Yes, but it works because you generally come from a genuine place when you do it. Because you also have to deal with a lot of dark shit sometimes.
Bad City stuff. I am currently going to film school. My dream I had since I was a little kid was one day making a Batgirl movie because she's my favorite Batman character. But now Hollywood would want a woman instead. She's
Okay, so question, Bat City stuff. How did you find our like podcast and channel?
Yeah, that is actually a good question. Because I don't think we're that big.
Yeah, no, we still have like 13 subscribers, I think.
I thought it was 15.
Somewhere
Hold on.
in there.
I'll check. Let's check.
I know I have like 83, but this isn't my channel. It's sort of our communal channel.
Yep. All right, so 17 subscribers.
Sweet.
Yep. She's my favorite character, and the sad thing is that Hollywood would never let me make it. Didn't they have Joss Whedon on for that movie? Like he was going to make that Batgirl movie at one
They
point?
did. They did in fact, yes. And to be fair, since he is the mind behind Buffy and Black Widow, I can't say I blame him.
Wait. Are we? You mean Black Widow as in like?
MCU Black Widow. Yeah.
Well, I know that, but are we talking like the versions in the Avengers movies, or are we talking like he helped with like the script for the actual Black Widow movie?
No, he helped with her appearances in Iron Man 2, and then every appearance she's had in the Avengers movie. One of his character choices with her is what got him lynched by the feminist Stasi.
Right, the whole can't have a baby thing. That's
because she actually considered herself less capable because she couldn't be a mother and she wanted to be a mother.
Which is probably, I actually respect, and I like that idea though. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, no, that idea works. It's just a traditional gender role. You can't say a woman should even desire to have children.
Right. Then how do they feel about Kill Bill? Is the thing.
They consider it a feminist empowerment fantasy because it's a woman, taking revenge on a man for doing horrible shit to her. However, some feminists don't like it because she's quote unquote adopting a masculine role by being violent, and they would prefer that she could somehow take revenge without actually being physically violent.
Do people not know how? Do those guys? Clearly, they don't know how revenge works.
But you see, they're thinking more with their morality than they are with their brains.
Fair enough. All right, so Guggenheim's script would undoubtedly benefit from being brought to life by a filmmaker with a more personal perspective on what that's like.
Okay, I mean, I can see both sides of that argument. On the one hand, what is preventing a man from empathizing with that? And on the other, also, like, stay-at-home dads do exist. They are rare and they don't often get much play, but they do
I don't
exist.
know. It doesn't mention that she's married or anything, so she could be a single mom. So.
And also, as strange as it is, there are also single dads. So there's that.
Yeah, that's a thing. Clearly, Jackpot is still in the early stages of development, so it may be a while, maybe even years, before there are any additional updates to report. In the meantime, Sony has attached S.J. Clarkson to direct a female-led Spider-Man spin-off, believed to be a Madam Web movie.
Okay, wait a minute. They're hiring a woman named S.J. Clarkson to do a female-specific Spider-Man spin-off.
And I'm also looking her up. She is a British television director.
That's almost begging to be a meme. Someone make that a meme because I can't unsee that. A female-led movie directed by someone named SJ. Lol.
She's worked on The Defenders as a director.
As in the Netflix ones?
Yeah.
Okay, that is probably not a great sign.
And Jessica Jones.
But to be fair, most of the things wrong with Defenders and Inhumans and Iron Fist were all Scott Buck's fault. So there's that.
Yeah. Hmm. Let's see, writer. Oh, I mean, doesn't seem like a bad choice. Yeah. Okay. And continues to move forward on other projects based around female Marvel comic book superheroes, including an animated Spider-Verse spinoff featuring Spider-Woman, Silk, and Spider-Gwen.
I hope that, if anything, the coronavirus gets these people's heads out of their asses and reminds them that they do actually need to make a profit at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to give the S.J. Clarkson a benefit.
Yeah, I'm not saying she's a bad director or anything. I'm just saying it's ironic that someone very evidently made a female-specific Spider-Man spinoff out of social justice bullshit, and the person they got to do it was literally named SJ.
Yeah.
Like that's bordering on like supervillain naming conventions.
Mm-hmm. You know what would be funny? If there was, if there was a female director and they made a female superhero spin-off movie of Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't touch any of the social justice bullshit, and it's just a good comic book movie or a good movie in general.
Well, I mean, it worked for Patty Jenkins, so I suppose it's not inevitable that it'll fall into social justice crap fast. But
I don't know. I'm just saying.
I don't like those odds because it very much seems like social justice crap fest is what they're shooting for.
Yeah. Hopefully some, if not all, of these films will be deemed worthwhile enough to eventually land an official green light for production. And let's see if there's anything else. There is not. I'm marginally interested. Okay, so Bat City stuff. In my mind, Batgirl is a hipster and has a personality, not another Batman copycat. One thing that makes her interesting is that her police commissioner dad doesn't know about her being Batgirl. Not sure about the hipster thing. Well, how would you describe hipster, Bat City, is the thing?
Hipster characters are very hard to do because hipsters themselves are a very annoying subspecies of human.
Yeah, so it's just how you define a hipster, because there are.
My definition of hipster is very negative, so I don't know exactly what you're going for with hipster. Plus, it's very hard to do a hipster character without making them essentially do Buffy speak and talk like a Valley Girl.
Ugh.
Especially a female hipster.
If I was doing a Batman spinoff movie, it would be a Red Hood movie. That's like one of my favorite characters.
Oh,
okay. She would be a hipster, but not in a way that makes fun of the culture.
Again, that sort of raises more questions than it answers. But that's a topic for another day because, of course, it is almost time for us to get gone.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we have comic recommendations, as we often do at the end of our streams and tirades and rants and everything else that we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I will suggest a novel and 2 graphic novels. Just realized I said novel twice.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly a novel concept. But Jim.
You get no points because that was too easy.
I'm aware, but you are also aware that if I didn't say it, I might have exploded. Or worse, had like a brain aneurysm.
I get that, but still, man, put some effort into it. You can do better.
I am aware.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm recommending is just like a regular book. It's The Wheel of Time, the first book, The Eye of the World. I've just started reading it like yesterday. It's a good book. Like it hooks you in like automatically, and just it sets this world up nicely. Still doing it. Um, but yeah, no, it's really good. Uh, it's kind of long, is the thing. So you got to be hunkered down to read this.
Hmm. And because we actually have someone new in the audience tonight, I will sort of default to my standard recommendations. Number one, if you are a comic fan and you have not read Neil Gaiman's run of The Sandman, remedy that post haste.
Mhm.
Seriously.
Right, and I'll also do some of my goats, like the first ones I ever mentioned on here. Invincible by Robert Kirkman. It's fantastic way of like deconstructing and um, just twisting standard superhero tropes.
Hmm.
Um, Also, Spawn, like the classic Todd McFarlane Spawn series.
Yes, and I will second that Spawn recommendation because Spawn is awesome.
I mean, it's '90s and it's cheesy, but it's fun as
But
hell.
it's everything you want from a 90s comic, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And also, uh, uh, damn it, I had it right. Grant Morrison, All Star Superman, and his Doom Patrol run.
And while we're recommending Grant Morrison stories, his run of Animal Man is a thing of beauty, and everyone who's a fan of comics should read them.
Mhm.
Also, second standard recommendation that I sort of default to every time I bother to default to things. If you have not read the Dresden Files series of novels and or the comics that are written by the same person, um, that is in the same universe, I would highly recommend the Dresden Files. The Dresden Files is awesome. Do not, for the love of fuck, watch the show. The show is shisa to an extent that I can't even begin to comprehend. The early 2000s on sci-fi was not a good time for high concept fantasy shows. But the actual Dresden Files books are amazing, and there's a fuck ton of them, and they're really easy to read. So yeah. Also, the first four audiobooks of the Dresden Files are free to listen to on YouTube. So
Right.
there's that. And I sped through the first four of them in a weekend.
Uh,
So
hey,
that
don't
should tell you things.
you forgot Swamp Thing.
Oh also Swamp Thing. Basically anything Alan Moore where Alan Moore doesn't have to stick up his ass is good, but I'm a I'm hyper fixated on sort of the magical and mystical and cosmic side of things. Therefore, Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Um, Also, while I'm recommending things of that vein, um, you can get the entire run of Jack Kirby's The Demon in omnibus form for like $20 on Amazon, and it's Jack Kirby, so you owe it to yourself. And Edric and the Demon is awesome, so that speaks for itself.
Okay, so before we close out, that city stuff has some really interesting. Just has some things I would like to read off before we go. All right,
Okay.
so good morning or afternoon or good night moon or sun. Good night, mom. Mr. Ditkovich versus Mr. Eyes. I believe that's something. I don't know what it is. Mr.
I'm I'm sure it's a reference to something, but I am blanking on the reference.
Well, Mr. Ditkovich is from like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I don't know what who Mr. Eyes
Ah,
is. And he says they should have their own comic series or graphic novel, and also I Love Doom Patrol and Grant Morrison. Yes, it is. Grant
yeah.
Morrison should be.
Grant Morrison is awesome. So is Alan Moore most of the time. So is Neil Gaiman.
Most.
Although with Neil Gaiman, I will offer the caveat: if you're going to look for Neil Gaiman, look for when Neil Gaiman is on fantasy stuff, because when he stretches into sci-fi, it doesn't come out quite as good.
Right. Okay.
But he is the king of modern mythology making. So there's that.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom, and welcome newcomers, and also fuck off.